Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Bonus Points podcast. I'm your host Joe Garrett, as always being joined by Ollie Guy.
Hello.
Hello Ollie, first podcast of the new year, and it's a special one for us because we are being joined by a new friend of the show who is not only a video game lawyer but also the community manager over at Minnmax, which is an outlet that Ollie and I are big fans of and have mentioned many times throughout the podcast. So welcome to the show, Haley MacLean.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be on the first one of the new year. I didn't know that was the case. That's exciting.
Yeah, and also talking about 2023's Game of the Year, Baldurs Gate 3. We're starting with a bang.
Heck yeah. It was a lot of places Game of the Year, eh? Like, it feels like a lot of outlets picked it.
Yeah, it feels like everyone goes to like Video Game Awards. Well, that's the official Game of the Year, as if it matters in any way more than any of the other outlets.
Yeah, Steam said it on their webpage, so that now it's everyone's. There's something weird reason
now
like
it's real.
that.
Yeah, and there was so many Games of the Year this year, or last year, I guess. There seemed to be like things that would normally be potentially Game of the Year weren't even getting in like my personal top 10 because it was just so stacked. So.
It was like in recent memory. I don't know about you both, but can you think of a year where it felt as stacked? Like I was like 2016 was pretty good, but it wasn't like this good.
No, I think like 2007 is the one people point to.
Yeah,
there's like a lot of bangers there.
Mm-hmm.
True.
So
what was the year that Overwatch came out? I remember that was pretty
2016.
Yeah.
Oh, it was 2016. Okay, yeah, there you go.
Uncharted 4 as well. Like there was a couple big ones that year, I remember.
And it was cool for us because Ollie and I both hadn't like played much of Baldurs Gate 3 last year. Like we both played on Xbox, so we're like late to it, which meant for our Game of the Year we were able to give it to Alan Wake 2 without any like big debate, which I know you're also a big fan of. So
I adore Alan Wake 2, so that works well with me too. I honestly, like I kind of said, like for the purpose of the Minnmax Game of the Year, I kind of had to slot them, but I would kind of put Alan Wake 2 and Baldurs Gate 3 number one for the year in my heart, but I know I have to be realistic and say, okay, here's the actual list. Otherwise, people are like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Well, you'll be happy when we later in the show when we get to our list. You'll be happy to see where Alan has ended up on our list because he's doing all right.
Fantastic.
He's in good company. But anyway, before we get into it, Ollie, do you just want to set up what Baldurs Gate 3 is, just for those that haven't heard of it?
Yes, I will. I'm going to read so I got the Wikipedia entry, but it's super long, so I've cut it down to like the most essential info. So Baldurs Gate 3 is a 2023 role-playing video game developed and published by Belgian game developer Larian Studios. The game is the third main installment in the Baldurs Gate series, based on the tabletop fantasy role-playing system of Dungeons & Dragons. Players can create one or more characters and form a party, along with a number of pre-generated characters to explore the game's story. Optionally, players are able to take one of their characters and team up online with other players to form a party. There you go. That's it.
Awesome.
Simple as that.
I guess we'll start with Haley. So why did you choose Baldurs Gate 3 out of all of the games, and a game that I know you've spoke about extensively recently, like over at Minnmax? Like, why did you want to kind of keep talking about this game so much?
This game took me by surprise like crazy this year because it wasn't on my radar at all. I don't play Dungeons & Dragons. I didn't know the first thing about Dungeons & Dragons. I've always wanted to, though. I just never really had a friend group that we would do well in that kind. Maybe I'd have to be the DM or something to actually get it going. But I've never played Dungeons & Dragons. I never really played a tactical turn-based like CRPG, like a really systems-heavy kind of one that wasn't just like kind of holds your hand a little bit, like you have to really learn everything about it. So I didn't really learn about Baldur's Gate until the day before it was coming out. So like I always kind of laugh at my friends who've been waiting for this game since 2019. Like they had to wait for years, and I was like, oh, it's out tomorrow, cool. And then it became like my favorite game ever. Time traveled a little bit, but like it just, the amount of player freedom it gives you is like, I haven't felt like a little kid playing a video game in a long time, where this game kind of does that for me. It's just, oh, I wonder if I can do this. And the game's like, sure, here you go. Yeah. It's like, oh, can I kill every companion? It's like, yeah, if you want. You're like, really? It's like, yep. Like it just does. It truly lets you do whatever you want. And that might sacrifice some more curated story things. But Larian's really interesting in that they're like, we don't care. Like if you don't want the really nice ending in Act 3, kill everyone. Like, and you can. It just won't be as satisfying, but that's up to you. Like I like that they're not there's not as many safeguards and safety rails, which I really appreciate. Like a lot of story-based games, it's like, okay, but we really want Karlach to be around at the end, so we won't let them kill her. She could just get mad and come back later. They're like, no, chop her head off Act 1 if you want. Go for like, I just think that's such a unique and really bold way to go about game design that only a studio with a lot of money and a lot of time, which they did, could do and put all the effort in. And it really caught me off guard where I found myself getting really invested in like YouTube videos in my free time. Like, you know, I didn't know that much about the world or how the gameplay worked, so I started it, but I knew that there was a kernel of something awesome there, and I was like, it's worth it enough. I think I have to go study. So I just stopped playing the game to watch YouTube for hours and hours to then come back and have enough confidence to try fights again. And mostly for the characters. Like, it's really the characters for me, the performances, the writing. Every single conversation feels curated and authored, and just like so much love in this thing that I just feel like a nerd for, and I just fell in love with it. It's normally a case of where you get one of the two. You get you get an Uncharted, you get that curated, cutscene when it's, it basically, you watch a movie for a bit and then you play your game, then you watch a movie for a bit and you have an incredible story, or you get a really open story where you kind of make your own story, but it's usually just gameplay and maybe like, just a beginning and middle and end. Whereas this one, it's kind of giving you both, where you'll be like, oh, I made up this really weird thing that I did, but then there's like a cutscene which is voice acted and has like unique like motion capture in it. And it's like, wait, they knew I was going to do that? Or like they knew that was a possibility and they considered it? And I think that is where this game feels like it doesn't have competition, because, we are big fans of Disco Elysium. Like that's really high up on our list as well. Love that game.
And I think that's the closest, but I do think this is a different category to Disco.
That's a good comparison. I've never heard someone compare those two games, but you're right. Like that's similar energy just blown up into like an open world RPG where you're like controlling the adventure a lot more. That's a great comparison.
Did you say that this is your favorite game of all time? Did I hear you say that?
It's in my top 5 of my top 3 even of like my personal favorite games ever. Like this year was hard. Well, Alan Wake 2 as well. Like I absolutely adore Alan Wake 2. So this year was so good for me personally, because literally 2 of my now favorite games of my whole entire life came out like in the last like 6 months. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But and then one of my other like favorite games is Red Dead Redemption, because it really got me into video games when I was like 16. And it just has a really nostalgic goggles like special place in my heart. But these 2 games, I've just been like, oh, I'm eating good this year. It's just such a good year for me.
So I have another question as well about CRPG. Does anyone what does the C stand for?
Computer.
I didn't know that. I always hear people say it, and I'm like, because obviously
I think it's pretty
it console,
generic.
But
it's pretty
but
it's like tactical turn-based.
Yeah.
So Larian don't like, they say they never use that phrase, and they don't like it because they say like, oh no, you can play it on PlayStation and Xbox, and then some people say CRPG for classic RPG. They've kind of retconned it, and then they're like, no, we don't like that either, because like our game is very modern. Like there's nothing classic about our game. So it's sort of like they don't use it, but like people have called it that, and that's the way language works. If people are calling it, that's what it is now. Like they can't really fight it.
Yeah, so that's true. If it's on other consoles, is it no longer a CRPG?
Yeah, I know. It's such... Yeah, people are so weird with, like, nailing down, like, well, is it Souls-like? It's not really Souls-like because it hasn't got this. Like, people get weird with that.
God. Yeah.
What's the, like, everyone's background then on this? Because I'm, like, the new player. My only exposure to Dungeons & Dragons in my life was, like, Stranger Things had one episode. It was the beginning of one of them, and like that's literally it. So I was like
an expert then. Okay.
I'm an expert. Yeah, so you could say that I'm an expert. Well, so I've played 15 and a half hours entirely in split screen. That's where
fun. You're doing a co-op campaign.
Yeah, so I'm playing with my partner, who also knows nothing about D&D, but also knows nothing about video games, really. Bless her. So it was like a double learning experience on her side.
That's a lot to learn at once.
Yeah, it was.
Video games and Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, it was like still 15 hours in. I was like, press RB, and she'd be like looking at the controller, and it's like, it's the top one, the top right one. So it's been a lot. I mean, obviously it's been great. It's been really fun. But that's I've never played it in real life or anything like that. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, me neither. Joe, have you played?
Yeah, so I'm the D&D nerd, I guess. So I've played D&D for about maybe about 8 years or so, like kind of on and
nice.
off. Like we're not super regular. So yeah, I know the D&D side, but I've never played a game like this. Or this game wasn't even on, not probably as extreme as you, Haley, but it wasn't on my radar. Like I knew it was coming out, but like I didn't think I was going to play it until everyone else started saying it's really good. And I was like, oh wait, what's this? What's that? I need to pay attention to this one. So I wasn't planning to. But then I'm also playing through co-op, but I'm playing through online, so not split screen. So
fun.
I guess we can discuss if there's a difference there. But I've put in almost 60 hours now, and that is
Nice.
since the Xbox release. So it's been like, you know, I don't know how far through the game I am, but it's been quite intense. Like it's quite compact time span. It was good timing over the holidays when I had enough free time to be like, this is a Baldur's Gate day. Good. There's our plan
Those are the best
sorted.
days. 8 hours straight sitting in one chair.
Yeah, leftover food and Baldur's Gate 3. We had a lot of days of that.
Are you guys being good eggs in your first playthrough? You're being nice to everybody and choosing nice dialogue
I
options?
think we both struggle with choosing the bad options. Like even if I started another playthrough and I was like, I'm going to be evil, I couldn't do it. Like, it makes me feel uncomfortable being like, hey man, screw you. Like I'm going to steal your stuff. I'm always just like,
you're ugly.
Okay.
And they're like, oh.
Yeah, I can't do it.
But I do like what they did. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Haley, go ahead.
Well, I'm doing a Dark Urge playthrough now because I've completely beaten the game and I've tried the first act in a few different ways. But I'm like, I want to be a naughty Dark Urge and for people who don't know what the Dark Urge is, it's this unique custom story that they made that has tons of extra content. I can't believe every other conversation, they have a whole Dark Urge way to have that conversation, which has been so cool to see. So it's really making the game feel fresh again as I go through because I was such a good girl my whole playthrough. Like everyone was like, they'd be like, I'm going to kill you. And I was like, okay, like I'm very sorry to have gotten in your way. Like it's just so nice to everyone. And alternatively, when you're Dark Urge, you have these special prompts come up where they'll be like italicized and it'll be like your urge. So it'll just be to kill someone or do something really naughty and then like resist the urge. So you can either be like a Dark Urge who succumbs to every urge or you can be a resist Dark Urge. And those are two different playthroughs too. And they have custom stuff, but I'm just like total naughty Dark Urge. And I'm also like making myself choose every mean thing. Like Auntie Ethel was like, how are you, dear? And I was like, you look gross. And she was like, well, that's a little rude. Like I just am like choosing everything mean. But it's kind of freeing that they've made that a thing that's almost crafted for me, so it's not like me doing it and being mean. It's like I'm just
you're not making the decision. You're just you're following the script they gave you. You can leave your guilty conscience away.
Exactly, but it's been really fun. It's made the game feel fresh again, which is hard to do after like 190 hours for one playthrough.
Wow.
Like that's crazy.
Is that one playthrough? Sorry, you've done one.
Yeah. I went to every little nook and cranny. I looked at every barrel. It took me forever, but I went through. Act 3 is very meaty when you do everything because everyone comes back around. It's nuts. You'll talk to somebody by a tree, and then in Act 3, they're like, "Hi, I'm actually the head librarian, and I have a quest for you." And you're like, "What?" If you had killed her, it would have been like no 4-hour quest at the library. Like it's such a again, like the choice element is it's so easy to lock off 5 hours, but devs don't normally want to do that because they put so much effort. But Larian's like, nah, let him kill her, whatever.
I know.
Like,
I was talking about that with my partner, and we were saying like, because you know, you go to like the first place you go to is like this grove, and you meet all these characters, and then you keep seeing them every place, and you feel like the easy thing to do would be like, this is the first chapter, this is the area, there'll be the side missions for this area, and then we can almost turn the page apart from the main quest when we get to a new area. But like, no, they make it hard because all of the threads they start, they have to like trail through the entire game, and every step it goes, there's more different diversions it could have gone on, and you just can't. I mean, I'm such a nerdy person. I'm always trying to see the edges and push it, or like try and game the system. It's like, oh, I'll say this to them because I know the game wouldn't actually let me do that, so I can say what I want here, whatever. But this time, I can't see the edges because there's so many times where I feel like, oh yeah, I'm gonna say like, let's go here, and someone's gonna jump in and say, no, we shouldn't, and then like that decision won't matter. But this game doesn't do that. Like you said earlier, every time I suggest something, the game's like, sure. It's like an improviser that's like yes and. The game's like yes and while I play.
And it doesn't care if that results in a worse plot. As long as player agency is like first, and you can have player agency to have a better story if you want, or you could have player agency to just kill and run around and be a little jerk and do whatever you want.
Yeah. Should we just quickly, for people who are on audio only, explain what the game looks like and how it plays? just so we're all on the same page, all listeners are on the same page. Yeah. It's basically like a standard looking top. It can either be top down RPG, something like Diablo, or you can swing the camera in, play it in third person, and you kind of can run around and talk to people, and then you get like multiple options to respond to people when you speak to them. And some of them will be related to your character, like if you're intimidating, you might have an extra option that's like you can tell them to get out of the way, and they'll actually do it. And then the combat is kind of it's turn based. It's kind of like XCOM-y if it wasn't on a grid.
Yeah.
And you have way more options. Way more options. Like you have like 3 or 4 radial. Did you play on a console, Haley?
No, I played on computer. But I've seen my partner played on console, and it seems like it's relatively well mapped out, for console.
Yeah. Considering how many options there are, it's quite easy to kind of learn where everything is. But you basically have these like radial wheels that you can have multiple wheels. I think you can reorganize them, but I never bothered. I kind of just left them as they were and remembered where all the options were. And then apart from that, it's kind of apart from that amazing thing I've just described, like doing anything you want, talking to anyone you want. It is like you get quests, you go and do them, you level up. That stuff's all like a known quantity. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the rundown of it.
Yeah, I guess the other thing to mention is like how the D&D aspects and kind of like dice rolls, kind of how that plays in would be kind of good to mention.
Yeah, so the dice rolls is like if you try and do something that's I don't know any D&D terminology, but to me it was like if something appears to be a little bit tricky, you normally have to do a dice roll.
So they call it like a skill check. So say,
okay, there you go. Yeah. So if it's like, you want to pick a lock rather than just opening a chest, you'd have to roll a dice. Or if you want to lie to someone rather than just speak to them, you'd have to roll a dice. And then you'd have things like, because you're particularly dexterous, your lockpick, you'll automatically get an extra thing on your dice roll. So they'll be like, can you roll a 6? And then you roll a 5, but because you're dexterous, you get +1, so therefore you get the 6 and you pass. That's kind of how the flow of the game works. But it's like the highest level presentation for something like this that you could ever imagine. Mm-hmm. We obviously did Disco Elysium, and we talked about it before the show. But that's like just characters on flat backgrounds, like just drawn backgrounds. And this is like a fully 3D world. It's like I don't know. I think this game has this is like I think it's like a 10 out of 10 on every presentation front. Like they really did everything. Even the character, the details of them is so much. Characters you just run by, and they're wearing like a velvet top, and you're like, oh my god, I can literally I feel like I could crunch it. It's like, oh my god, it looks real. Like it's kind of crazy. But I thought it was a really small team, and it was only when I spoke to Joe this weekend and your partner, and you were like, they got 4 offices with thousands of people, because it's like an indie game or something, isn't it? I don't really know.
Could we call this an indie game?
Yeah. It's because they're partly owned by Tencent, so it's hard to say they're an indie game.
As soon as Tencent owns 1 share, it's no longer an indie game. I feel like.
And wasn't it like crowdfunded as well or something like that?
Yeah, and then they had like pre-alpha builds. I don't know if it was crowdfunded, but I know they did alphas for years and years, and most of Act 1 was available for free to play. Up until like the I don't want to say what the space is in case I don't want to spoil anything. There's like a area after the Grove you're talking about that's like the next part of Act 1, and you could play fully up to that area, but apparently a lot of it was different, and they would bring out waves of updates, and they were really community focused. So everyone would be like, it kind of doesn't feel good when this happens. They'd be like, okay, fixed, like here you go, and they just did that for like 3-ish years. I think 3 years was completely like radio silent development, and then 3 years was development while the community was giving input, and they were like updating it from then. And it really hits different, I think. I think that's probably why it feels like such a crafted and like player friendly thing, is because it was made for 3 years straight with the players like yelling at them, we want this now, and they're like, okay. And they just put all that stuff in as they went.
And for a narrative game as well, it's like super weird to like have early access for a game like this.
Yeah.
And did they also, sorry, this is like, I promise I'm interested in this. They also self-published it, right? Is that right?
I think they published and developed it, yeah. I think they did
How
both.
did they get all this money to do this? Because this game is insane. Like,
I don't know.
I'd never even heard, I'd heard of their games, but I'd never heard of them before this, like the actual studio.
You know what it might have been is the D&D licensors might have done like a royalty split thing where they get money and they'll give them a huge advance to make it, and then they knew it was going to be special. that they just kind of had to hope that it was going to be good, and it clearly worked out. They probably have a lot of money, but maybe for the license, they were like, okay, well, we're going to get 70% of the revenue until you pay us back, and then we'll go back to 50-50 or something. And they gave them a ton of money to develop it. Because I can't think of any, if they self-published it too, especially, like where else would that money be coming? I mean, Tencent.
Yeah, of course.
That's one place to point to. So it wasn't crowdfunded. It was Divinity Original Sin 1 was crowdfunded.
Oh, okay.
And then, and that kind of where, I think from then on they were that's when they went independent. Before then they were working with publishers and getting frustrated because they're trying to make their kind of games, and they're saying like, no, like look at Dragon Age 2 and like, trying to make them make a very different kind of game.
You should put an M4. You should put an M4 in your game. Like it would sell loads. You should put perks, rocket launchers. It's going to be great. Cool. Also, I don't know if we mentioned it, but you just touched on there like licensing and stuff. Haley, you are a video game lawyer. Mm-hmm. So you're fully in the know of all these sorts of things. I do have some lawyer questions for you, but I think I'm going to keep them till after we've done Baldur's Gate. Okay,
sounds good.
So brace for those.
Brace for them. Okay, ready.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions from the community, Ollie? I think that might be a good time to kind of, because I feel like I had a look through. I saw that we got quite a lot. Not surprisingly,
we did
for this
get a lot.
game.
We did get a lot, and so I picked a few. I can't read all of them out. We got literally like probably over 60.
Oh, wow.
So I picked a few of them out, so Relly AB on our Discord server asked, what was the smallest decision you made that had the biggest impact on your playthrough? And who did you romance, if anyone? Joe, do you want to go first?
Sure. Smallest decision I made. I don't know if this really counts for that, but basically... I think it does. I found some shoes that I just brought from a vendor, and basically it means that whenever you dash, it gives you like bonus health, like 18 bonus health. And then I also, as Karlach, when I rage, I would get a free bonus action to dash. And that basically meant every single turn she got plus 18 like additional health. And I think I broke the game because it really felt like I was playing Slay the Spire or something, because once I found that out, and like she was kind of quite tanky anyway, but it kind of made her almost invincible, and it kind of got us from the point where we were like struggling through the content, doing okay, like sometimes changing difficulty down, and then once we unlocked that, we're like, oh fine, like Karlach will do it, and then we'll play with everything else. So that was a small decision, buying those shoes that
so
transformed
were you just
the combat
dashing
side.
Even if it was a foot away, just so you get the health boost?
I would be next to someone, and if you move away from them, they get an attack of opportunity, which means they get a free hit on you. So I'd be standing next to someone, I'd just run around them to the other side just to dash and then carry on.
That's so funny.
So that was a small decision. And then the romance thing is funny because my partner really, they're an Astarion simp, basically. So they're basically playing this game to go for Astarion. So that's like they're 50-50, they're doing that, and then everything else. And I was kind of just like, I was just more mission focused. I wasn't even going for anyone, but then everyone just kept coming on to me. So I had Shadowheart was coming on to me. Will is my official, like I've kissed Will. That's where we are at that relationship. Gail's, I watched the Starry Sky with Gail. He invited me away.
He's such a simp.
Some of these people, they just sit, I spoke to them like twice. They're just sitting in the camp doing nothing. And then I come up to them and they're like, we really have something special. And I'm like, what? Like, what did I do? I don't even know what your moves are. You're still level 1. Why are you coming under me? So I'm accidentally romancing Will, but he is lovely. So I'm fine with that. So I'm sticking with Will.
Yeah, nice.
That's fine.
Haley, have you got one?
I think for mine, there's one particular tiefling that if you make sure he stays alive and sticks around, then it essentially makes your romance of Karlach like a much more satisfying thing. And it's just one tiefling because there's like 20 something of them, right? But if he dies and he doesn't make it to Act 2, it completely locks you out from this whole story for Karlach that's like really important, I think, and whatever. So, I romanced Karlach, and I love her. I was obsessed with her. And my friend who was ahead of me was like, hey, like, not to spoil, but make sure he lives. And I was like, why? And she's like, if you like Karlach, make sure that guy right there lives. And I was like, that's so weird. And then in Act 2, it makes sense. But literally, like, if I just if during one of those fights where everyone's fighting everybody and he didn't happen to make it out alive, or, I didn't AoE focus him to make sure a random NPC enemy killed him, I would have lost out on like probably dozens of hours of Karlach content. That's crazy. And the game doesn't really tell you that. It's just like a thing that you learn as you play.
I think I'm on that. I was playing about an hour ago, and I think I've just got that mission because it's like, we need to find like an engineer.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, okay. Do you remember what the name of the guy is? Because I want to see if I've actually still got him.
Damon.
Okay. And does he like look particularly different or?
No, he's always like working at an anvil. He's like he was in the grove like working on stuff.
Yes,
and he's a sweetie. Like he's a really sweet. He's like the nicest tiefling. He's like, hey, I'll help you for free. Like he's just.
He
nice.
almost died from me. I don't know. I don't mean this isn't spoilers because it's like such like a minor thing, but like, did you speak to like the ox that's like near him at that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I won't say there's a strange ox there that somehow he ended up almost dying from an interaction, but I guess I can kind of see how he would be important. But yeah, I didn't know that. Anyway, Ollie, what about you? What's your story?
Well, I'm not that far in the game, so I kind of rushed to fighting Nere. I think it's Nere, that guy, but I was only level 4.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, oh dear, I need to go back to back up. So then back up to the overworld so that I can level up a bit. But one thing that did surprise me is, I think his name's like Volo, the bard in the Goblin camp. I was just talking to him and I was like, just assuming he was just like a funny guy that was just like going to die or leave. And then he was like, oh yeah, you can come back to the camp. And I was like, he can come back to the camp? Like, just this singing guy. And then you go back to the camp and he can like operate on you. And it's just like,
did you let him?
Do you know what? I think I backed out at the last minute, but I did let Astarion bite me, which I don't know how I felt about that. Because to be honest with you, in terms of the romancing, me and Bryony, my partner, like, we didn't really know much about the game going in. And it kind of like freaked both of us out because we weren't expecting it. Like, Halcyon was the one that was like, Bryony was talking to Halcyon and she had the option to be like, we can do something else tonight. And then we're both like, like, oh my God, like, you can't say that to him. Don't say that. We're just like really timid about it. But that big part, they have like a big party in the camp. And that's been the only opportunity we've had. And then we both fluffed our lines and messed up. So neither of us managed to get lucky. But does the opportunity come back around to like?
It depends, because each character has their own like preferences for partners and whether they'll share and whether they won't. Like some of them are okay with it, some of them are not. Some of them are only okay if it's with certain other people. Like for example, Astarion, if you also want to romance Gale, he's like, ew, don't do that, darling. I won't approve of that. But you can also romance Halcyon. He's like, okay, that's cute. Like he approves of certain people. So it's interesting because it makes it very. You'll want to go through and romance certain people because romancing them has all different like act 3 things that happen or endings even that happen. Like I very much felt like my ending was crafted towards how much time I spent with Karlach, because I did every single Karlach thing and loved her, and like we were both just like, I love you, like at the very like at every opportunity. So at the end it almost felt like the game was rewarding me for that. I was like, here's Karlach and you and how your ending goes out instead of like more of a party thing. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, no, it's there's opportunities. Don't worry. There's
so how do you like
people,
initiate? How do you like? Do you just ask them about themselves and then?
It feels like I'm in college and I'm flirting because I'm like, do they like me? There's actually one time I'm doing the Dark Urge playthrough. It's weird. Everyone wants me. I worked so hard in my first playthrough to be like flirt with people and see. And then Dark Urge, 3 people hit on me that night. It was like, yeah,
wow,
like I really like you. And Shadowheart in particular came up to me and started flirting with me, but I didn't know if she was or just talking. So I did a read mind check. And it passed. Yeah. And it was like, yeah, she wants you. She doesn't know why, but she does. I was like, oh, and it's like, God. I'm using magic to flirt and figure out like what girls want me, what ones don't. It's really funny, but there's speedruns actually specifically for Lae'zel romance speedruns, and they have it down to like 2.5 minutes.
Lae'zel? Wow. Who's Lae'zel?
The Githyanki woman.
Oh, I didn't have her. She ran away at the beginning. I never got her back.
Oh, she's in the Grove area. You can go get her.
Oh, really? I found a crashed pod, but there was no one around it. It was just like off on its own, and there was no one there.
Oh no, she's like in a little cage, and you can free her.
Oh, because my partner's playing as a Githyanki, so I thought maybe I just didn't get that one. I didn't get her because I've got one with me.
Oh, she is. Oh. She's fantastic. She's one of my favorite characters. You should go try to find her.
Nice. Yeah, because go on. Sorry, go on, Jay.
No, I was just going to say, so she's dead for us. She died before we got her as a companion. Because I think we also somehow missed her early on. Like, we saw her in the ship and stuff, but then we obviously missed where you're meant to find her. And then we found her later on when it was like her kind of in combat. I can't remember the guy with like the dragon who flies away. I've not kind of run into him again yet.
The red dragon.
Yeah. So there was that moment, and then the combat starts, and we had all leveled up a bunch, but she was obviously, because she hadn't been a companion, level 1, and she just died one hit. And so we kept reloading, and we were like using hold person on people, trying to do all these protection things to her. And then I was like, she kept dying one hit, and then we're like, you know what? The game wants her dead. Like, we've done our part. We've tried. I knew she could be a companion because she's on the loading screen every time I load up the game. So we knew she could be important. But in the end, we're like, you know what? We're going to do multiple playthroughs, and we'll learn to love her next time through. It's fine. Like, we got enough companions.
Wow. Like, isn't that cool? That like that's what I love about this game is like all these anecdotes. It's just like, oh, she's not in mine. She's in mine. It's like she's such a key character in my playthrough. But yeah, if you don't need her, you don't need her.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
That's because the companions are such a huge part, and if you do have them with you, there's so many little moments where people be like, like Astarion, like you're back in the city, whatever. Like, and I'm always thinking, because we're playing co-op, and so we only have 2 companions with us at any time, and so like I'm just thinking of how many of those moments I'm missing out on because just the limits of the game, and it is what I guess makes repeat playthroughs so enticing.
Yeah, there's a mod where you can have everyone come along with you. Just for even just those interactions, like they don't have to be all in the fights because then it's kind of unbalanced. But just while you're walking around, it's just you and like 10 people walking. So if a random NPC, it's like, oh, Karlach, there you are, like knows Karlach. If you didn't have Karlach, you never would have heard that. But this mod makes it so those get triggered every time. I kind of want that mod for one playthrough, just to hear every single little conversation you could possibly hear.
Is that you, Karlach, back there after this this gang of people in this crowd?
Not even on the screen, like just way off.
Go with the blacksmith, like just take up the whole shop.
I did, in terms of your companions, I know this is an absolute Baldurs Gate love fest, and the game is amazing. I just want to say I had a great time with it, even though I feel like I don't understand.
Oh, here it comes! Here it comes!
I found Will, and then about straight away did the mission to find Karlach.
Yeah.
And I was expecting them to fight and hate each other, and nothing happened. I was like, you can come back to the camp. Yeah, but they were just like, so I went to speak to Will and be like, what do you think about that? And he was like, don't speak to me another time. And I've never managed to get him to actually speak to me. I don't know if it's because he's my partner's partner.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got to be grouped up with him. Yeah, but
I was expecting there to be some sort of problem with them both being together, but they were just like, oh yeah, that's like nothing. They didn't say anything. They were just passing each other, and I was like, oh okay, like
interesting. So they have
that is a co-op thing. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, so like because in mine, I specifically brought him to see Karlach, and I had to talk them down from fighting. Like they were about to be like, bah, and I was like, chill out. Really? And they're like, okay. And then we came back to camp. He was kind of mad, but then like she had advocated for herself and was like, I haven't done anything. Like, why are you mad at me? And he's like, maybe you're right. And then he got over it. So I didn't really have to do that much. But that's so interesting that they thought of, if you're doing co-op and one person romanced him, but you don't do that he needs to have words to say for, he needs to stick around, but the other person talks. Yeah. It really just, you realize how much effort probably went into every single thing.
They've thought of everything. Also, Karlach is like completely mad. Like the last thing I did, she was just like shooting up a building with her crossbow.
I was setting it on fire.
Yeah, she was like, woohoo! Like we were on the roof and it was all shaky. We're like, what is going on down there? And Bridie was like, don't bring her back to camp. Like you have to get rid of her. She's too mad to bring back. I was like, no, she's cool. She's cool. She's coming back. But she's really similar to my character, like in terms of her skills and like, because I'm also playing as a tiefling. So I do feel a little bit like maybe I don't need her to come with us because we're both like bruisers, tanks, basically. Because my build's super boring because like I don't know anything about Baldur's D&D. So I was just like going for like options on the character maker that I kind of understood at face value, and I was like, okay, if I make him strong, and I can read out what he is. He's a battle master Asmodeus tiefling soldier. If that means anything to anyone, I don't know. But
I was an Asmodeus tiefling too, so I have like the fire resistant stuff. But I was a druid because I thought that's kind of fun. It's like fire and earth. I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah, and also the druid gets the animal animal talking, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk to all the animals. That was like 90% of why I chose Druid.
Yeah, Bryony's playing as a Circle of the Moon Gith Yankee folk hero. And
wow.
she can like all she does is like turn into badgers and sit on chairs. That's like her favorite thing. The badger sits there, like she's absolutely loving it.
It's
or
like
turning
500
into
XP
cats. And,
over
yeah, what
That's so funny.
because like normally me and Joe, we don't talk about the game at all. Like when we're playing it, we try and keep it for the podcast, but we have been a bit naughty because this game's so good. But you haven't actually ever revealed, Joe, what character you're playing.
So I'm a druid as well. I'm a druid dwarf. I'm called Meeple. And my partner's called Catan just because they're in our room which has loads of board games and they saw Catan. They're like, that's a cool name. Then I was like, I'll be Meeple because in a lot of games that's like what the little characters are called. So it's really good because there's a lot of times when it'd be like, I am the Death Lord, like who has come to my realm? And like, there'd be a dialogue option of like, Meeple. I was like this little dwarf with like kind of pink hair, like quite cute. Like so it's quite a fun name for that. But yeah, I'm doing a lot of talking to animals and like summoning animals. But then I also focus to like be a sharpshooter, so they're really good at like bow and arrow attacks, and then I can use Misty Step, which is basically teleport. So often in fights, immediately I just teleport to the high ground and have advantage, like basically a bonus on all of my attacks, and kind of just be like a big like sniper, like damage output. That's kind of my role.
Nice. Are you a Circle of the Land or Moon druid?
Land.
I was land, and then I respec to moon because changing into an animal becomes a bonus action. So you get to save a whole action to turn into an animal and still attack if you're moon.
So that's why, because I summon and like a familiar and then snipe, because I do sometimes change to like there's like that panther thing that I sometimes become with like the three tails, but then I realized that like I do more damage as me with like I got like a really good bow and I can attack multiple times in one turn because of I'm not even sure what is grinding me to do. There's something that's allowing me to like end up in a turn do like over 40 damage like quite consistently. So in the end I was like, you know what, she'll stay as that, and then I'll have I like spawning in the bear. Because they use an attack called like honey paws, where they just knock the weapons out of people's hands, and so it'd be like this big boss with their giant sword, and you just keep swiping the thing out their hand, and then they have to spend a whole turn picking it up, and then that's their go. And so that's quite a fun way to kind of cheese some bosses.
That's smart.
What character are you playing, Haley?
My character was a druid tiefling. Which made the Grove really interesting because I had custom language, because the Grove is like this argument happening between tieflings and druids. So I came in and they're like, you're kind of both of us. Help us fix this. Be the mediator. And I was like, whoa. And I actually, because I wasn't as familiar, like up to that point when I first started playing, I thought the game was like spawning in tieflings and druids like for every combo of people for like I just thought that maybe that was what's happening. Like I was like, I couldn't have chosen the one combo of the main fight in the first area, but I was just like a 1 out of 100 chance that I did that. But they had all custom stuff for me being a tiefling druid. Like when I talked to druids, they were like, "Oh, tiefling," and then I would say, "I'm a druid too." They're like, "Oh, okay, maybe I'll talk to you then." Like, and they had, and then like so vice versa too. And then for the main people who were like in control of the big fight happening, they were like, "You're the only one who can help us. You know both sides of us. Please mediate and help us in this problem." And I was like, wow, this game loaded in these two people just for me. And then my friend was like, how'd you like the tiefling druid camp? I was like, but you're like a paladin. You know, like I was like, how did you get that too? And that's when I kind of realized, oh whoa, this game is just really, really detailed.
Yeah, so the druid camp, for me anyway, it was like before Christmas, but I remember going from that to the goblin camp. That's kind of the way you go, right? So I'm assuming all of us must have done the goblin camp in like completely different ways, because there's a video going around with someone explaining like all the ways you can do it, and it's like hundreds and hundreds of ways.
I was really surprised they didn't attack me when I first walked in. I thought that was what's going to happen. Yeah, but you can really be sneaky and like trick them into doing what you want and stuff. Yeah,
in our game, I'm going to ask you guys what you did, so I'm going to give you a chance to try and remember back to what you did. But in our game, what we did is Bryony changed into a cat and kind of went in and scoped out, because the cat they're not bothered about the cat. First time she went in, she went to scratch a post and it like tore down half the base. So I was like, we have to reload because you can't, because they all turned on her because it was like a scratching post. It just came down. But then basically what happens, you have to go into this goblin camp to save this guy called Howson, but you don't know what he looks like or anything. You just know that he's there. And then what ended up happening is Bryony went in as a cat, accidentally changed to a human, and hit someone with the change. And then she got thrown in jail, and then realised that she was next to or close to Housing, because we heard he was in jail. So then she went out again as a cat. We all just walked in because we were like, we don't know her. So everyone just kind of left us alone. And then we basically, Housing's in this like deep room right at the back. And we kind of, all three of us stood in front of the door, like went in, stood in front of the door and just kind of waited. And then Bryony the cat went down and just opened the cage that Housing was in and just kind of let him out and like let him loose. And our plan was to put him to sleep, because we were like, we'll just put him to sleep and then I guess we'll figure out how to get him back to the camp. But once we let him out, he became like a friend, like a green, or like we could see that he was on our team. So then we just absolutely tore through the base on our way out and just took out everyone on the way, including, he's like, oh, I want to kill these 3 people. We just did it on the way. We didn't go back for it. We were just like, we're on fire now because we got this bear with us. And the fact that you can do that, the fact that whatever Joe is about to say is going to be probably completely different, hopefully.
Yeah,
to what
it is.
I just said. Yeah. So how did you get
Do you want me to go? Okay, so one of the things of the game, which is a really cool setup, is like, I won't go into too much detail, but basically you've got a thing in you, kind of like in your brain, which makes it so a lot of like the baddies think you're one of them, which enables them to do what Haley was saying about where a lot of these places where you'd expect you walk in and everyone attacks you, people are like, oh, you're one of us, like good, like I can see you're like a true soul, like, you're one of the good guys, for what they think. So I just fully embrace kind of going undercover. So there's like the leader kind of goblin of that camp, who basically is like, I'm another true soul as well, and we were going to do this ritual. They're going to like look into like my eye and stuff. And so I just fully went with that. And then there's, is it Minfara, Haley? Is that the person there? Yeah, so there's someone there who I didn't actually realize until later can be a companion. I'm assuming a companion of yours at the moment, Haley, with the run you're doing. But she's...
No way.
I killed her.
Oh, you killed her?
I got her to be my friend, and then I killed her because he had
villain
dark urge.
The villain. How deep does this go?
The dark urge led her to like me because she's like, "Oh, you're an evil little guy. You're the best." And then she came back, and he was like, "Think about killing her." So I did that, and then he just killed her, and I was like, "Oh,
oh my
so she's
god,
dead."
Wow!
But apparently, she has a really cool whole long story that I could have seen. It's gone now.
The basement has basements. I didn't know.
Oh my god!
But I basically went to her and I was like, "Yeah, I'm on your side again. I hate the Grove. All those lovely poor like refugees. Like I hate them too. Like, and then we put grease on the floor and shoved her like to kill her because basically we couldn't have killed her normally. And then we regretted it because we're like, well, what if she had good loot? So then we reloaded. And then we got Housen, and then with Housen we went on a rampage similar to you, Ollie, and just destroyed everyone. And then found, I don't know if you found them yet, I don't know if I want to spoil it, we made a friend from the camp, a cute big-eyed friend we found at the Goblin camp. Completely by accident, we went to teleport somewhere else and mis-teleported to the camp later on, and we made a friend, which I really don't want you to miss, Ollie, which is why I was telling you to go there. So that's my Goblin camp escapade. Yeah,
nice one. What did you get up to, Haley?
I just completely went in guns blazing because I failed a lot of checks. Like I just kept failing them, and I was trying not to reload too much at the start. I did it for a few things, like that mysterious ox was like the first thing I did it like 50 times because I needed to know what that cow was doing. It was like this cow's a little suspicious. I was like, what's the cow doing? I sat for half an hour reloading until I figured out what that cow was up to, and it was worth it. But for the fights, I kind of wasn't reloading. I just wanted to see what would happen, but. Yeah, so there's that first, you come in, they're all drinking, and they're having fun. They don't really care about you. So I walked to the front gate. And when you come in, I guess you can only use your true soul trick once a day. Like you have to long rest, and then it works again. So I'd already used it before to get into like a village or something. So I walked up to the front, and the person was like, who are you? Like, what do you want? And I was like, oh, I'm the true soul. But instead of it being a 2 out of 20, it was like a 15. So I failed that. She's like, no, you're not. And then I was like, I just need to come in here and talk to Princess Good is all. And she's like, that's not what you said before. And then they got mad and fought me. And then when I walked into the next room, everyone was just aggro from then on. So I just had to fight my way through. So we fought our way through, got Halcyon, let him out. He fought most people. But then I was a little bit worried that he was gonna die. At that point, I was like, I don't know if Halcyon can die. I kind of want him to be on my team. He seems cool. So he was like, do you want me to stay and fight with you or just go back to camp? So I sent him back to camp because I was worried I didn't want to babysit him essentially and before he was in my team. So he went back, and then I was pretty over leveled at this point because I had done every single little thing before going to the Goblin camp. So I shoved. There was one guy who, I don't know, it's the third one. I always forget his name, but there's Princess Gut, Minthara, and then the third guy in the throne room kind of thing.
Yeah. We're not going to remember, but yeah.
I don't remember his name. But I think I got really lucky because I walked up and I pushed him, and he fell down a hole I didn't even see, and he died immediately. I didn't have to fight him. I was like, oh, cool. So then, Karlach pushed him. He fell and died. I was like, perfect. And then I fought off his little guys, got a ton of XP for that. Princess Gut was not that hard. And then Minthara had, I kind of, did what you did, Joe. I think I threw stuff on the ground until she burned up. And then I was like, okay, and we're done. And I just left out the front door. But I probably took the hardest route. I was fighting upstream for hours and hours.
There's a lot of enemies.
That's a lot of enemies. I'm very surprised.
Yeah.
We have a question relating to this from Nick in our Discord, who says, were there any encounters that you got stuck on for ages? There's one for me there's a part just after all this where you have to go underground, and it's quite easy to get jumped by little dwarves, I think. They kind of just suddenly appear. Yeah. They're invisible. Yeah. So I wasn't reloading. The only time I was reloading my save was if I really failed a fight. I was not reloading if I chose the wrong thing or failed a roll. It was only if I failed a fight. And I think I had to do that one about 6 times to actually get them. And we had to do military precision of being we're going to stand in this corner and block these 2 doors, because that one was so difficult. I don't know what it was that made it so hard, but in the end, all I was doing was shoving them off the top down into the pit, and then they'd run back up and then shove them off again. Because I gave my character ability where if he pushes someone, he has a chance to do 1 to 8 extra damage if they fall. So I was literally just lobbing everyone off the edge, and everyone was just kind of backing me up.
Push is OP. Push can get you out of a lot of tough spots.
Yeah, as long as you're strong enough though, because Bryony's character failed athleticism every single time they tried to push someone. So
fair.
You have to be built up for it. But yeah, Haley, did you get any? I mean, maybe on the earlier side of the game.
On the earlier side, there are some doozies in Act 2 and 3 that I tried, especially where I was trying to save everyone. And there's a lot of fights where not only are you fighting the enemy, but they're killing the NPCs you want to get out safely who are trying to run. There's one specific one in Act 3 that you essentially only have a certain amount of turns to get everyone out, and the whole time more and more enemies are popping up. So you have 5 turns to get everyone out, and they're the NPCs are dashing every time, not fighting, and only you are fighting. But then, it's kind of RNG. A random thing will spawn next to them and hit them twice, and they're like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, I have to reload and try to save her. I want everyone out. That I spent a lot of time doing that. It wasn't hard. I just was trying to do it perfect, and that made it really difficult. In the first act, the Goblin camp kicked my butt. I had to reload that first area with all the chandeliers where there's 5 of them up top. It's where Princess Gut kind of is, and then a bunch on the floor. It was trying to teach me to shoot the chandeliers, I think, and knock them down, and I would try to do that, but they would move, so I ended up just dying a bunch of times.
I think it was trying to teach you to not try and kill everyone. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, maybe don't fight in this room, but I did it anyways. But I definitely had to, because I didn't, when everyone dies, you have to load anyways. I probably had everyone die in the Goblin camp probably between 5 and 10 times before I finally walked out the front door. Oh God, okay, we're done in there.
So what actually happens when they die? I never have anyone permanently die.
So there's scrolls of Revivify. You can bring them back in the moment. And if not, then there's a guy that comes to your camp. I don't know if you've seen him yet. His name's Withers.
Withers, yeah, we got him.
You can pay him to bring them back, and there's almost no penalty. So you don't have to be as precious with if someone dies but you still did well in the fight, and it's just Gale's dead on the ground. You don't have to be God, let's reload. I think it costs 200 gold, and you can bring him back at camp. He has everything. He has all his stuff still on, all his items and everything. So I think they knew that it would be kind of annoying to not be able to. They just kind of gave it to you, which I was happy about because I definitely had. Gale died so much. He's so squishy. It's just dying, so.
I ended up just leaving him behind because I couldn't make much use of him anyway. Joe, any fights you got stuck on?
Yeah, I got a great example because it happened like an hour ago. So and to the point where we're like, we'll return to this later because we're I got a podcast to do and we failed. So basically, I've just arrived at Baldurs Gate. The people that don't know, Baldurs Gate is the name of the city in this game. So I've just arrived at Baldurs Gate proper, which is an exciting moment for me. But try not to spoil this. Karlach did something out of my control to get herself arrested in the city, and she got taken to prison, and not like normal prison, like prison in like the fortress, like big prison.
Oh, wow.
And so we had a mission to break her out, like a self-inflicted mission to break her out, which was a story in itself, where we basically came down and like got one of the rogues to unlock the door, and we used a scroll of invisibility because we were fine to be in the prison, but we had to get her invisible so she could run out. And then that was all fine. We got her out. We were good. But then we ended up going underneath a pub where there was a special thing underneath a pub. Haley might know what I'm talking about. So it's the pub where your camp is in the lower city.
Yeah.
There's a big fight that happened down there, but we were fine. We can deal with it. I got my cheese with Karlach. She's basically invincible. I sent her in, and she's ready to do damage. And I suddenly realized she's not holding a weapon. She's just like fists up, ready. And I'm like, oh, they obviously took all of her stuff. I'm like, they've obviously got her stuff. It's in a chest somewhere. So we're like, we've lost our ace. So we had to like try and do the fight without it. And then they also did like hold person on her, so she couldn't move, which made like her rage kept ending. Apologies for non-Baldurs Gate D&D people. This will make sense to some of you. And yeah, we realized like halfway through, like this is completely unwinnable. And so now when we go back, we've done the rescue mission to get Karlach. We now need a rescue mission to get all of her gear. So we're going back to the prison.
Can you like not pass her something?
So yeah, well, I gave her just like a thing, but it's not like her. Like
you want the shoes, the dash shoes.
Yeah. She kept her shoes, but it was everything else around it, all of her stuff. So I think we could do the fight, but we need to beef Karlach up a little bit.
What a unique thing! I didn't even know she could go to prison. That didn't happen for me for whatever reason. That she
it was a full cutscene. She was with me when you meet the ruler of Baldurs Gate, and who she really doesn't like, as I'm sure you'll know. And she was very angry, and I tried to talk her out of it, but she just like during his coronation just sprinted up to attack him, and it ended about as well as you would expect. It was a pretty amazing moment.
Funny. Oh, now I want to Google that cutscene. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was great. God. Is there any other, just like, I've got one I want to share in a bit, but has anyone got just fun stories, any like unique moments, funny cutscenes, or creative ways that you solve something? Because that's what I always love talking about with this game.
I did have a good, basically like when we learned how to place objects in the world, we did quite a lot of like placing barrels like in a chain and then like blowing them up. Also, one cutscene that sticks out is there was a guy like strapped to a windmill. I don't know if you guys got that one, and you have to like, he's like, oh, like help me! And you have to like fight these like bandits or something underneath, and then you can like get him down, and he lets you have his bag. Like it wasn't like super funny or anything, but it was where I was like, oh, this game is like actually funny. Like it is actually trying to do something funny. It's been quite weird going into this like not knowing what to expect at all, and some things have caught me off guard. Like I did also hear about that you can like kick a squirrel or something, but we haven't seen that.
Oh, so, it's in the grove.
It's
really sad if you kick it.
It's a pretty aggro squirrel. That squirrel doesn't like you. It doesn't want you there. I managed to bargain with it to let me buy. Talking to animals is just such a any animal. We had an encounter just outside the city where it was like a courier pigeon place, like just a courier place, and we just went to like chat to a pigeon. It was like here's like the marshal, like ready for duty. Are you ready, soldier? And it's like a military pet. And you talk to all of them. They all have different voices. They're all like, yes, I'm like the soldier, and like, but all our messages are getting stolen. There's like a building on the west side, and like they're all being taken out. And so I flew up to like the roof of like this big temple next to it, and there's like a cat with wings. It's like a flying cat, and I'm like, have you been eating the pigeons? And it's like, no, I only like pheasants. And then I was like, have you? And it was like, yeah. And like it gets up and it's like pigeon heads in its like nest, and like flies off.
There's special dialogue there if you bring Gale to meet the cat too. There's like a whole extra cutscene about it. Yeah, because he knows the cat.
Oh really? Oh yeah. They flew away. Away. Next playthrough.
that pigeon killed me because I made my friend and I were weak because we were talking about like Tears of the Kingdom versus Baldur's Gate, which we love both those games, but like we were weak because that pigeon had more personality than like 90% of the characters in Tears of the Kingdom. Just a pigeon in a little window was like, "Howdy, soldier! Like, let's go!" Like the chicken from Chicken Run, the rooster. Like that's what it reminded me of. And meanwhile, Link just stares at the ground and doesn't say anything. It's just like such a funny concept that a pigeon could have more of a personality than Link, the most famous and like well-known character in video games at all time.
Yeah.
That's
to be fair, they're also famous for not having a personality. To be fair, that is one of their like
the conduit
most famous
of the player,
traits.
Link. Yeah, that's true. The Master Chief-ification.
This game must have the most voice lines of any game, right? Surely.
Oh, yeah.
It must do. I think before, like, Skyrim was saying they had thousands of voice lines or whatever, but like we just did Skyrim
actors.
Actually. we did Skyrim on this show like less than a year ago, and I'd never played Skyrim before, and I have to say Bethesda now must be looking at this and being like, what the hell are we doing over here? Like we need to do something for our next game.
It's going to be hard to release Bethesda's next game after Baldur's Gate because it's kind of like what my kid brain thought Skyrim was doing. Is what this is doing now. So it's kind of hard to have the comparison next to it, especially after Starfield, which was fine. It did not have that Skyrim magic for me, whereas this 1,000% has like the Skyrim magic.
I will say, as someone who played Skyrim for the first time in 2023, doesn't have that much magic anymore.
I could respect that.
Every enemy is just like sidestepping all the time, like sidestepping off things. It's like, oh, okay.
Just yelling like, "Hey, you!" That's 90% of the interactions.
Even Mass Effect, which I would feel like is closer. So like we've been replaying, like we're on the set. We just finished the second one doing the Mass Effect games, and that in my head was like what Baldur's Gate is. And I was like, oh no, that is you're completely seeing the video game. Like you can see the graph and you like can work out which way you're following. Whereas like there is a graph, but like I'm sure they have it, they know it, but like I'm in a world in Baldur's Gate, whereas Heavy Rain, Detroit, any other games, the Telltale games that are trying this, to obviously these games are all of different scales, different budgets, but this is the only one where I'm stopping thinking about it as like a video game, and I'm thinking about what is this character going to do? Like how would that character react? And like I'm very rarely surprised by an outcome thinking like, oh, that's not what I thought would do. They wouldn't do that, would they? Like it is always does line up with how I think that person would react in that world.
I totally agree. It's weirdly mentally freeing because instead of trying to figure out the walls every day, like a Telltale game where I wonder if I save her instead, does he live? And then he dies 2 minutes later anyway, so nothing actually mattered. It's just pretend. Here it's everything actually. Yeah, that's and my brain gets to turn off and just be like, I'm in the woods with my friends and run around and not think about it so much.
Yeah, that's so true. It's literally like, so we got stuck on the this underground fight, and I was like, we should just go above ground and like find some stuff that we missed. It is so nice walking around and just like hearing the birds, and like it looks lovely. We just found just now about an hour ago Auntie Ethel, is that her name? We found the secret to do with her.
Oh, I was gonna say, how did you feel about her?
Straight away my guy was like, there's something not right here. So spit it out. Let us know what's going on. But it was actually Brian who spoke to one of the sheep, which was the giveaway. So.
Oh yeah.
Again, being a druid.
Yeah.
Game changer.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Okay, can I say my silly story or something that happened?
Oh yeah,
yesterday?
Sorry, go on. Yeah. Go on.
Sorry, it wasn't the pigeon and the flying cat. That wasn't the silly story. So we're once again in the city, and so like we're not spoiling anything big here. Both Ollie and I haven't even finished the game, but this is like a moment that happened. So feel free to just skip ahead a little bit if you want to go completely blind. So basically there's like a circus, like a traveling circus that you run into, and then there's a genie that's doing like a spin to win like type game. And so we were doing that, and it's quite expensive, like each roll. And then my partner had a check where they saw that in like his beard, he had a thing that was controlling it to make sure you wouldn't win the jackpot. So basically we found out he was cheating the game. And so we confronted him about it. And he didn't like that, and we failed our checks. And so he's like, right, I'm going to transform you into something unless you just leave. And we didn't. We kept pestering him. And so then he turned us into cheese. And we were like literally like a giant cheese wheel. But it looked like Pac-Man. It had like a slice out.
Yeah.
And then we were just running around. But then all of the people in the area has like dialogue going like, oh, is that cheese? As you're like walking by. And you can go to like benches and sit down. You have a unique attack, which is like cheese odor or something that like makes a cloud of like smelly cheese. And we kept going back to him, annoying him, just so he'd keep turning us into cheese because we really enjoyed it and like going around this circus as cheese. And then we were like, oh, wait a minute, we did the spin so in time. We didn't actually really realize how much money it costs. He's like, he's got all our money, and also we want this jackpot. So we then pickpocketed him and just stole everything from him as well, and then left. And that was our lovely day at the circus, being cheese wedges.
I will say, if you pickpocketed him, if you go back and talk to him again, there's a whole other thing that happens because now he can't cheat. Yeah, so then something happens, and then he gets mad, and something else happens.
Oh, we'd do that. Oh, turn me into something else, please.
I actually got a weapon from that interaction I used in my end game, so it's a good. It's just a guy in a circus. Yeah.
So, how much of the game is like front loaded in Act? Because Act 1 seems pretty long.
I probably spent the longest in Act 3 just because I did everything in Act 1 and 2. So, like, as soon as you walk into Baldur's Gate City, the quests are it's just like every single building has a dot on it. You're like, oh no. And you just know you're going to spend 100 hours.
We just had that moment today when we got to the lower city, and just in the mini map is like the whole top half was just like a semicircle of like quest markers. We're we've arrived. So, am I in Act 3 then? Because I don't think it actually ever says when you're in different acts.
You would be, I think there's like a little area right before you get into the city proper. That might be where it cuts off, and then you're in Act 3. But there's even, I know where you're talking about. There's a lot of stuff there. And then as soon as you get into city proper too, every single building you go in has something in it. Even if it's a little secret and you look or something, or it'll be a wrap up of a previous mission. So it reached a point where I was just walking down the street going in every building, like, knock, knock, what's my mission? And like going inside the building to see what was going on. Because it's never just a 1-bedroom apartment. It's a 1-bedroom apartment that leads to a temple. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm doing a temple now. Like, it's truly, and there's a lot of extra areas in Act 3 too. It's not just the city. It'll lead you to a lot of other weird little nooks and crannies that are like not on the map, but like it'll teleport you somewhere, and then you have to do that whole area and come back. It's just so much stuff. I do love Act 1 the most, I think, just because of the vibe was so like new adventure, new friends, everyone's meeting, everyone's having fun, but in terms of content, Act 3 is just so heavy with it, and they're all fun. All the missions are fun.
Nice.
There's no go find 10 chestnuts and come back and talk to me. It's like actually things that are interesting and can happen right now.
I haven't had one I mean, there might be some that are technically a fetch quest when you look at my inputs, but like none that are set up like, oh, I need 5 of these flowers for this potion. Like I haven't had any I haven't had any filler at all in this game.
Yeah,
and for the amount of content, like that is crazy.
I'm playing Final Fantasy 16 now at the same time, and like it does not hold up very well. I had a side mission of Final Fantasy 16 that was like, can you weight these tables? And I was just like, God, like walking over to them. And also like there was no animation for him like holding the plate or anything, so he's just like empties his hand and it's like, and they're like, oh, thanks for my dinner, and he's like, that's okay. And like I was just like, oh my god, this is
10
so
XP.
lame. Yeah, it's like so lame. Okay, this has been an absolute Baldur's Gate love fest. Does anyone have any negatives except for me? Does anyone else have any?
It was a little buggy at launch, but they've fixed it quite a bit. And I've heard some people say they've had quite a lot of bugs in Act 3. I think I was lucky and I got through without them. Joe, are you getting late game bugs?
Yeah. I've been getting. I think a lot of them is co-op and maybe co-op online bugs. We have a lot of things where like, oh, someone's opened a gate. For me, it's open, but for them, it's closed, and so they can't go through. Like things like
annoying,
that. We've had one crash. So like, it's buggy, but it's sort of like I know you shouldn't. Like, I kind of give it a pass because it's like, well, of course it's buggy. Like, look what they're doing, you know? Like, it's like, of course, it's like saying like, oh, this person's run a marathon, and oh, they're getting sweaty. Oh, we don't like sweat. It's like, well, yeah, they ran a marathon. Of course they're sweating. You know, that's what it feels like. And it's what
a good analogy.
You know, It's not ruining our experience whatsoever. The only like, I guess, thing that's in terms of like the world and the story is I do feel like in Act 2 there's kind of like two very dark areas kind of back to back, like quite big. And for a while we were like, can we just go somewhere else just to see like sunlight for a bit and then come back and like do these missions? And the way that area concludes, I guess I'd say the place because it's pretty known you're going there, to the Moonlight Towers area, like the way that concludes like blew our mind. Like that was amazing. Like the way that all came together was great, but there is two kind of big dark areas back to back, and you know the sunny areas are so pretty. We really wanted to go back to like the woodlands or like the city or something.
Yeah, go back and kick a squirrel and be in the sun.
Yeah, I want to go kick squirrels.
Enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
I have got a negative that's very similar to what you just said about the marathon sweating thing, which is like, obviously this game's got loads and loads and loads of amazing dialogue, well written, well acted, well, you know, it's just knocks out of the park. It's a shame that my character doesn't seem to have a voice. Only sometimes he says things, like every so often after a fight he'll say like, oh, that blew out the cobwebs or something.
I wonder
like,
if the gods are looking at me now.
It's like, so you can speak. Yeah, it's like, so you can speak, but you have all these like funny lines. It's a shame you don't get to hear him say them. But I mean, obviously that's like a needle in like, there's probably 60,000 voice lines in this game, and that would be another 60,000 if they gave him one. The other thing is, I think that the combat especially is really complicated. If you not played D&D before, there are so many things in this game that I don't understand, and I've played it for 15 hours. Like, one thing that particularly sticks out is there seems to be some sort of like dice shorthand, and it's like, oh, okay, you get into this fight, FDE16, and it's like, I have no idea what that means. Like, it's not even like, oh, I can get it from the context. It's like, I don't know what that is. There's also
you're just clicking and hope the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So I tend to go for the easy options in these fights because the thing that I understand. So it's like, oh, okay, like big cleave. Like, okay, I get that. So I will do that. Where it's like, there's other things that are like cantrip or like just so much terminology. And as far as I can see, they don't really make any effort to kind of explain this to you. And when I made my character originally, it was like, obviously a million options, but I didn't understand any of them. So I was like just picking anything. Like, okay, that sounds cool. And then as soon as I got into the game, I realized that my character was like not prepared he was built completely wrong. Like, he was a strength character who was also a rogue. So he was really bad at hiding. And it was like, so I just couldn't use him. But like, I didn't know that they didn't say, there was no like preset to be like, oh, if you'd like to do this, choose this. Or like, you know, or like, oh, this character that you pick up, this companion's particularly good at healing or something. Like, you have to figure it out, which is cool because I get lots of moments where I'm like, oh my God, I figured that thing out. But sometimes it's just like, I kind of wish I knew going in, because the combat is like just so much going on. And also because it's quite slow, if you mess up at the end, it's like, oh man, I've got to restart and I'm going to have to go through all that again. But that's my. Oh, and the other thing is alchemy. I've got no idea what that is or how to use it. Apart from that,
I barely used alchemy. I think I used it 2 times for mandatory mission stuff, and I googled how to make X, and then I did it. I'm curious to see people who got into the alchemy system, because I barely used potions really, except for healing. I didn't really use the other ones.
Yeah,
that much.
same. The other thing I've used is putting poison on my sword, but that's kind of it. And then I don't know. It's just a lot of things. It took me a long time to realize that I could have both a bow and arrow and a sword, because sometimes it would get stuck. I thought it was getting stuck in bow and arrow mode, but it's because I used a bow and arrow before.
Oh, so this time holding it. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I'd be like, where's my sword? So then I'd go in and unequip my bow and arrow and re-equip. It's just silly things like that, but it's like, I wish it just told me a couple of things to like get me started.
I wonder if because they did the early access period for 3 months, like only the most hardcore fans of this style of game would have been doing the early access. You know, like my mate Ben, who only plays Call of Duty, like he's not going to be doing the early access Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate. So I guess they probably didn't get that much feedback because they all know this stuff or they're looking it up anyway. So I wonder if they had a more, I mean, I'm sure they were as well, but doing more general play testing, they would hear that feedback more and be like, oh, we need to, you know, onboard, you know, newcomers a little bit more.
Players.
Maybe they didn't think they would get so many D&D nerds. You know, maybe they weren't expecting this wide audience. They felt like they didn't feel like they needed to. I'm not sure.
I tell you one thing is that it's probably really obvious to people that played before, but something that was completely alien to me was long rests and short rests.
Yeah,
I was
that
like,
confused me too.
Yeah, I was like, I have no idea what either of these things are. I didn't even use short rests for ages, probably because I'm playing on Explorer difficulty, so I always seem to have loads of food, so I can always camp. But yeah, so that was something, and it was like, why are some moves unusable? And it's because I hadn't rested, but I didn't realize that until I read it back and then kind of put the context together, that I was like, oh, you can only do it once per rest. I was like, oh, that means I need to rest to recharge it. And it's like, there's a lot of that going on where I'm kind of going backwards through the system to like kind of figure it out. But that's my negativity over. That's everything.
I think you're right, though. Safe. Like, it's a gamble to have a game that complicated with barely any tutorial. Because I think it kind of goes into the spirit of D&D, where if you don't know what's going on in your round with your friends, you just go kind of look into it yourself a bit, or because you can't really ask Baldur's Gate a question like a DM.
Yeah, but that's like, the thing in D&D. If you don't know, you're with a bunch of your mates. You'd be like, oh, how does this work? Like, there's every D&D group, there's always one person who's really nerdy, you know, like just making characters them like on the weekend for fun, just endlessly. So you just ask, whereas that's the thing that you're missing with the CRPG.
Yeah, exactly. And they had pop-up things that helped you a bit, but I don't know. I didn't find they were that helpful. It was like very basic, like, you rest to get your stuff back. And I was like, okay, but then 20 hours later, I was like, where's my stuff? Like, it didn't really stick. It was just a 2-second pop-up. So I think they probably sacrificed hand-holdy stuff to appeal to their really nerdy fan base, and just maybe hope that people who don't understand go do the supplemental YouTube thing like I did, because I don't think I would have stuck with it unless I went and did I studied for this game. It felt and it worked out because it's now one of my favorite games of the year, my life. But I genuinely had to put that time in, and I've heard other people say, like, I think that's kind of a positive, because now I feel like I know a lot more about D&D. It makes me want to play D&D, and now I wonder if there's like is there any kind of energy towards like people coming to new D&D campaigns like, I just played Baldur's Gate. I'm time for my first D&D.
I bet D&D has skyrocketed up in this game.
I wonder if it's like derogatory, like, here's the Baldur's Gate girl. Like,
it's definitely. I was going to say
it's
that.
It's like the people showing up at the gym on New Year's Eve. It's sort of like, oh, you won't be here in December next year.
That's so funny. That's the perfect analogy. Just like, Druid, cantrip. But they're like, oh, she barely does anything. That's so true. But it does make you want to do that. But then I've heard other things, like Kelsey at Minnmax was like, that made me bounce off it. Like, I never touched it again, even though all your anecdotes sound so fun. I don't like that. So it's a risk, I suppose.
Cool. I was just saying, Joe, you've never had to have a toilet break in 2 years.
Oh,
That's
really?
the first time ever. Yeah, the first time you've ever had to run off to the left.
On and off screen.
It was the excitement of Baldur's Gate. I got too excited.
I
couldn't hold it in.
It pushed you over the edge. I can't remember what I was saying. I can't remember what I was going to say. I'll just something that we've we had loads of questions about it, and I left them because I thought we'd talk about it anyway. But what is everyone's favourite companion?
We know. I do Haley. Haley, you can go first.
Karlach or Astarion, they're both very good. I mean, their voice actors are phenomenal for every single thing they say, but Astarion especially, he has such an interesting arc that he can be a total sweetheart who's still sassy, or the meanest guy imaginable, like truly evil. Like, he bullies you. Like, I've seen clips of it's like, I won't spoil it, but it's like blank Astarion, like something can happen and it changes him fundamentally.
Right.
And if you do that, then he literally is like, ugh, why are you even talking to me? And he like ignores you and is very mean. I'm like, oh, whereas my Astarion is like, hi, darling, and is like, loves me, and is very sweet. I think it's so cool that you can have a character be so distinct and unique with him, especially where he can be like true evil or like, maybe chaotic good, not true good, chaotic good. And it's still him in between those two spectrums. It's still Astarion, but the scale is so different. I bet it's really hard to have a character's personality ring through while still sliding around on that D&D like neutral scale the whole time. But Karlach has my whole heart, but I appreciate that Astarion probably is the best written character in the game.
Yeah, we're just starting to like dig into like his quest, because like now we're at the city, so that's kind of we've kind of put that once we've got Karlach's gig back. That's our priority is to follow that thread, because that seems like an exciting.
That's one of my favorite storylines is his thing in Act 3. It's really good.
Yeah, cool. What about you, Ollie?
Mine's also Astarion. I know The thing is with him as well, it's not only all those things you said, but he's also really good in combat.
Yeah.
So I just put him to hide and then basically assassinate, and he does like so much damage. For a little while, he was my strongest character, even stronger than my guy that I spec'd wrong. Like he was doing like, 19 to 25 damage per attack for like sneaking up on people or doing ranged assassinations. So it was just kind of became at one point like, how do we get Astarion like in? Like how do we sneak him in? And that's how we're going to take out every fight. He's also, his writing, his character seems to have all the best like conversations with him. Mm-hmm. Obviously I let him bite me, which I felt a bit odd about afterwards.
The hands up.
Yeah. The other thing is he can bite people in a fight and then he becomes happy, and it's like I don't know what that means, but I'm glad. He gets health back. Yeah. Oh, no way. Because I've also got Gale, and he's like, "Let me eat your necklace. Like I really need to consume it." And I'm like, okay, like if you must, I don't really understand. And I always give it to him, and he's like, "Oh, it didn't do anything. Can I have something else?" And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here.
Best stuff. Oh, he always wants all my best stuff. I'll only have good things left. He's like, I'm hungry, Mom. And I'm like, enough. No more.
Yeah. I got a question for you, Haley. There's kind of two questions. One is, if they did Baldur's Gate 4, do you think they will bring across any of these characters? And then also, would you want that?
That's a good question. It's kind of like, I guess in D&D campaigns, is it normal
hi,
to...
Astarion.
Is that Astarion right there? Amazing.
Yeah, sorry.
I love it. We're just saying the best character, and then they come in.
Yeah, we're just talking about favourite companions, and Haley was talking about Astarion. Is there anything you want to say about Baldur's Gate? Because we've had such a shared experience doing it on co-op. Like, this is your chance, if there's anything you want to say.
Man, best game ever. Like, there's just there's no doubt about it. It is just incredible. It's like nothing I've ever played before, and it's perfect. There's just no notes.
No notes. Wow.
So we have our co-op campaign. Kai simultaneously has their own campaign.
I started another
because
one.
if I'm busy, then they have to be playing.
I think I've done like 75 hours now.
Amazing.
Wow, nicely done.
Yeah,
Me too.
Anyway. Bye, darling.
That's amazing.
That
Astarion's so cool, and Astarion was like, came into the room.
That was so unexpected.
My ears are burning, darling. That was completely unplanned. They just happened to be there dressed like that.
So who's your favourite companion, Joe?
I mean, kind of say Astarion now.
Yeah, let me make sure they can't hear me. I think it is Karlach. I think I just love. I just love the positive go-getter attitude. It's just like she's just fun to hang around with, and then also the combo of her like being the anchor to combat. I know that's not really her personality, but like I still think of it as her, so I think that kind of shapes it as well. Yeah, so I think probably Karlach.
Nice. Sweet.
Are there any non-companion characters, Haley, that kind of really stand out to you, other than the pigeon?
The one pigeon. There's some people that pop up. There's a really fun guy later in Act 3, and he can become a companion, which I thought was so interesting because it's so late game. He's just at the end, and I didn't even think he could. But he has a little animal friend that's like on his shoulder the whole time, so that also makes you love him more because he's like this very tough, huge guy, and then he has a hamster. So he's like, "Oh!" and the hamster's like, and like gets mad too. And I'm like, "Oh, I love you too. How can I not love you too?" But he becomes a companion, so he doesn't really count. I guess he could not be a companion if you mess up his whole plot line.
Yeah.
Besides that, the animals you find, like I love Scratch the dog, and like a little.
Oh, I got Scratch. I got Scratch yesterday.
Yeah, nice. Scratch is so sweet, and there's what you were saying, Joe. There's a very cute animal you can find in the Goblin camp who's like a sweetheart and he's a very cute animal. Like I think just because I was a druid, like every animal I met, I was like, I need to talk to them. It was like when I entered a new area, I looked for animals and then ran up to the animal to talk to them first, and then I talked to the humans and stuff.
Well, what I love about the talking to animals, and I don't know if this is intentional, but it really feels like actual D&D. So like at least our campaign's like a super city. Like we'll go a whole session with no combat, and like a session I mean like a day, like a long, like I'm just doing silly stuff. And so our DM is doing all the voices, and I really feel like the animals in this game just feel like just someone doing a silly voice. And I know like that's what it is in any game, but it really sounds like you talk to a pig and they're like, hello, I'm Mr. Porky. Like they just sound like someone putting on a silly voice, which is like very in the spirit of D&D. Like they don't put like effects on their voice or make them sound like a creature. It just sounds like someone going like, hello, my name is the squirrel. Like, so it's, and I really like, that's really endearing to me.
Yeah.
What about you, Ollie? Any other standout
can I give
characters?
one?
Yeah.
Really random, so random. But the first character that I was like, the first interaction that I had, I was like, oh, this game's like crazy. Like it's special. Was do you remember Nelly? In the Emerald camp, one of the druids, they're like a dwarf woman, and they're the first one that's like, I'm going to heal you.
Oh yeah.
Like the way they spoke was like so natural and normal that I was like, oh, this is like actually crazy. Like it felt like having a normal conversation with someone that's obviously got a crazy life, but it was like having a standing conversation. And that really stuck out in my mind to the point that when I found another route into there by accident, so I had to run past her again. I was literally like, oh, I should stop and say hello, like see how they're doing, like 'cause it just felt so strange.
My new friend.
That was one that was actually a moment we had to reload, because on the way back through, Bryony stole something off the desk. And it was like, "Oi, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, for God's sake, the one person I don't want you to annoy, you wound them up." So we had to like, rewind it.
Well, he's trying to romance Nelly the whole game. Like, sorry, Ollie, this game's it's not literally anyone. You're there like just giving them gifts and just like leaving like a pile of like shiny rings at their feet. Yeah, that happened to us actually in that first camp. But like while we were learning the controls, Kai just went to talk to someone and just stole something, then got sent to jail, and then we were like still learning the game. We're like, well, what does this mean? Like you're just in jail. Like no one's telling you how to get you out. And then we found in that grove there's like a back route out of the jail. You can jump around and like find this like hidden dungeon. And so I was like passing I think I had to pass like a feather falling thing through the bars so they could jump down somewhere. And that was like our first like immersive like kind of natural story that we had.
Cool.
Yeah, the jump, that's another thing that I felt like I didn't understand for like 10 hours. Didn't realize how powerful it was outside of combat, being able to like, you can jump like anywhere. Like it's great, especially my guy's so strong. He can jump like most combat encounters, he can jump like the length of the screen basically. So he's really good for doing that. I kind of wish I'd known that earlier on though. What's that, sorry?
There's so many sneaky ways around
exactly
things if you're good at jumping.
Yeah, I wish I'd known that at the start, because I probably could have made better use of jumping around, but next time. Shall we... Are you happy to go to the list, Joe?
I'm ready. Are you ready, Haley, to work out where it's going to belong? Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So first off, what are your thoughts on the... So we're not trying to make the list of the best games. It's just these are games we thought it'd be interesting to talk about, and we're putting them on a list. But are there any that seem out of place, or any that you give your stamp of approval for?
Ooh, love Disco Elysium at 1, Alan Wake 2 at 2, amazing. Yeah. You put Tears of the Kingdom over Breath of the Wild? You like that one more?
Breath of the Wild isn't on the list. So
it hasn't been assessed yet. I see.
Yeah. Breath of the Wild would win,
yeah.
I think. So at least for Breath of the Wild's my second favorite game. So that
I love that.
Unless Ollie would fight it, I don't think he would. I think Breath of the Wild would win.
No. That's your expertise, not mine.
I also adore Death Stranding. I love that game. So I love that's up there too. I love that game. That's another game I went into it. I was like, this seems silly, and then I built every highway piece.
We played it late. We played it for the podcast only last year, so we were new to it, and we weren't expecting to love it as much as we did.
I'm really excited for Death Stranding 2. I'm so curious how that story continues. It's such a nonsense concept, but so memorable.
Yeah. What do you think of Max Payne 3?
I love Max Payne 3. I actually played Max Payne 3 for a university class.
Wow.
When I got my English degree, it was a class called Story, World, and Play, and they assigned you got assigned video games to play instead of books to read, and then you wrote papers about the games. It was so fun. We played Max Payne 3, we played Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, Mass Effect 3. What else did we play? BioShock Infinite. And a few other games, and so I played Max Payne 3 for a class, which is so funny, but it's so fun. There's a reason that game is so memorable. And we talk of just the story and the slow down shooting stuff is never old. Like that, the whole soccer stadium level that sticks out of my brain years later. That was so fun.
I feel the same as you, and I had to go through 2 hours of Joe telling me why it was rubbish for this show. And that's how I ended up at 47 on the list. He was like, it doesn't work. It's low.
Oh, it's at 47. And
Haley couldn't even find it. It was so low down.
I was like, it's got to be somewhere in the bubblers at least. It's like, nope, it's down here at the bottom.
I agree.
It's not an upper crust bubbler.
Is he brings on a guest just to try and get backup, and sometimes it backfires in his face, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think Ollie knows kind of like just from Minnmax what your taste is, that he knew he was going to get backup from you with that one.
I'm excited to see the first Alan Wake at 21. I like that because some people say it doesn't hold up, but I only played it for the first time last year, and I adored it. I thought it was so good.
Same.
I played it last year. I had played it when it came out, but I didn't remember it because it was so long ago. All I remember is like laughing at the scene where he was drunk. But I played it last year and I was like, I don't know if I'm giving them too much credit, but I think because Alan wrote it, the writing is like schlocky. That's what my thought was going in. I was like, we'll have to wait for Alan Wake 2 to find out if I'm right or if it's just like maybe not as good as I think it is. And it completely paid off. And I was like, Alan Wake 2 is amazing. Like I literally can't believe how good it is. But yeah, I did Alan Wake, then the 2 DLCs, and I also did American Nightmare in the 2 weeks that we have to play the game. So I was like,
did you play Control as well?
I played Control before the Alan Wake DLC came out.
Gotcha.
So I didn't play the Alan Wake DLC, but
there's so much control in Alan Wake 2. I was so surprised.
Yeah. So there was a lot going on.
Funny story is I was watching you play the kind of Alan Wake DLC in Control with Leo Vader. And it was, I was laughing so much. I was having such a good time. I messaged Ollie saying like, Haley would be so good on the podcast. Like we should reach out to Haley to come on.
Nice.
But then that's when Ollie replied saying like, no, I told you ages ago we should have her on the podcast. And like, we just never did. So we both like separately wanted you on the podcast, but I'd obviously just completely forgotten that Ollie had said that. So it's almost kind of better that we both almost individually thought the same thing. But yeah, as we watched that playthrough, I was like, she should be great on this.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. It's really good to have you on. I didn't mean to just smooth over that. But Baldur's Gate 3.
To business.
Where are we putting this?
To business, yeah. This is a business meeting after all, so it's business time.
It's feeling slam dunk to me.
Yep. Okay. It's going to be top 10. It's going to be top 10.
Okay.
It's going to be slam dunk.
Okay. It's hanging out the dunks.
So, I mean, ultimately it ends up being me and Ollie's decision with you just influencing us as much as you want. So...
Gotcha.
This is very unofficial, but if you just had free reign to put it, like, ignore us, where would you put it if this was entirely your list, Haley?
Oh, I do love Disco Elysium a lot, too. But personally, I would put it at number 1 on this list. Having adored Disco Elysium, and also I love Alan Wake 2 and Tears of the Kingdom and Death Stranding. I love all those games. Yeah. But there's just something about this game. It's almost like the industry needed this kind of game as like a burst of positive development energy where every single other dev was like, yup, that's how you make a game. That's amazing. Look at this amazing piece of art that they made where it's so well thought out, facilitated. Every single little nook and cranny has thought behind it and somebody who cares. It's not just like someone filling out an Excel doc so that there's enough content to sell it for $80. It's like, I want this quest to make the player feel like this. And then they wrote it and they have the whole 1 part, 2 part, 3 part. And that's how you end that side quest energy to it. And, they're very community-based dev, which is really nice to see. And they really like engaging with their community positively. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of negativity around their community being like more of this and being mean to the devs. It's like the devs are like, what would you like? And engaging with them in a nice, fun way. And I don't know. I can see this being a game I keep coming back to when I'm an old lady. Like, I think I'm going to do another run when I'm like 70 in my old folks home at my PC.
Nice.
I can just see thinking about it for a long time. And then if they end up doing like Divinity Sin, like the next one, I'm going to try Divinity Sin now just because they've completely won me over with their game style. It makes me want to go back and play their older games too if I had enough hours in the day. But I will definitely play their next entries for sure.
We've had that discussion. We had a meeting about that. Like, really? do we go back? And,
it's a big commitment.
So,
Ollie.
Joe, have you got anything? You want me to go first?
Yes, please.
So I originally wanted to put Alan Wake 2 above Disco Elysium,
Okay.
but I was like, they're kind of interchangeable, so it's fine because I love them both. Now I'm starting to... I don't know if I like Disco Elysium more than Baldur's Gate 3, because the things that I don't love about Baldur's Gate 3 are the combat. Disco Elysium doesn't really have any, so it's like I don't have to worry about the combat in that game. Also, Disco Elysium's world and story is much more appealing to me than like dragons and goblins and stuff like that. But Baldur's Gate 3 is so good. Like, it's so mad. It kind of feels like the completed product of Disco Elysium. Like, that's what they were trying to do, and they did a great job, but now Baldur's Gate has done it better and has pushed it further. This whole, like, you know, role-playing. So I don't know. I think any one of Baldur's Gate, Disco Elysium, or Alan Wake could be number one for me, any one of them, and I would be happy, I think. So
am I just allowed to pick then? Are you just saying free reign?
Yeah, because even though I said...
Put Max Payne 3 down.
Even though I said that Alan Wake should go above Disco Elysium, now I've had some time to... I'm not on the Alan Wake 2 hype anymore like I was last year, because we played it as soon as it came out. I think I would put Disco Elysium above it. But do you know what's weird is Disco Elysium is kind of like the exact midpoint between Alan Wake and Baldur's Gate.
That's
like
true.
In terms of like as a game, like it's like exactly in the middle, which is weird.
It's like anamorphing into Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Joe, what do you think? I'm not sure.
Okay, so I am rock solid 100%. I want this number one. Like not a doubt. And I didn't in my first maybe even around where you were, I was like around 10-15 hours, I wasn't sure, because like you, like despite doing D&D, despite Elden Ring being my favorite game, I'm not a big fantasy person either. Like I generally like prefer more contemporary or like modern, like weird settings, and like the world of Elysium I do find more interesting. Ooh. But this game is like just I constantly can't fathom how it exists. And like what you were saying, Haley, about going down like the YouTube rabbit hole, I know you were kind of doing it to learn about the game. Like I've been completely in that with just like watching like the voice actors playing through the game, and like the narrator who's amazing, like all of their outtakes I've been watching, and I've just been so like taken over by this world. So me and my partner have been so obsessed. We had friends coming down to stay with us for over New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and it was like, oh, it means we can't play this game for like 3 days. There was one time when we woke up before then, we were looking through our D&D manuals and playing the soundtrack just to get like sniff Baldur's Gate until we could play it again. Like we keep saying like, do we have a problem here? Like we have been so obsessed. Like this, I don't know where it's going to end up. Like I'm already thinking when I finish this game, because I've not even finished it yet, like is this going to be competing for favorite game of all time? Like this is up. Like Elden Ring blew me away last year. Like I wasn't a Souls fan before it. Like I'd never played anything like it, and that was affirmed my favorite game of all time. Like this is the first time I've considered that, like, oh yeah, it might not always be my favorite game. Something else could come along and impress me, and I could enjoy even more. So I don't know where I'm going to end on that, but like in terms of the games on this list, it's absolutely a solid number one for me. Yeah,
nice one. I mean, I also think the enjoyment that I'm getting out playing co-op with Bryony, because she doesn't really play many games, so it's like quite nice having a game we can play together. That's really elevated it for me, like being able to play with her, which is great, because like normally after work we'll just like, you know, watch TV or like, you know, we'll have dinner, but now it's like, oh, we're playing Baldur's Gate till like 1 a.m. by accident, which is just crazy. So yeah, I'm happy with it being number one. I think it's like, as you said, it's unbelievable that it even exists, because where are the edges? You know, we were talking about Walking Dead, and you save someone, and then 2 minutes later they die anyway. Yeah, and it's like it's obviously
like Curly, literally.
Yeah, it's just like diamonds, right? Like it's just loads of diamonds after each other. It's like, okay, you do this thing, well, it goes back. I've no idea where the edges of this game are, like, and I cannot fathom how they planned it or made it, and the fact that it looks as good as it does. Like I'm obviously playing a split screen, the frame rate's good. Like the only knock against split screen I have is that it always shows our gamer tags in the corner, which covers my map, which is really annoying. But apart from that, it's like that's so minor. Like it's just mad that it works as well as it does. And considering I don't even understand 70% of it, and I'm not that good at it, and I'm still having like the absolute time of my life. So yeah, I think one is fair.
I think one's fair. I think because oh man, like just another like good thing about this game, which I think is so smart, is it would be really hard to start a story from scratch and like have such different characters all together. And how do we get them to want to hang out to do something? Like they have to have a common goal. And I think it was so smart. I don't know how common it is to use the thrall enemy thing in D&D, if that like the mind flayer is a really common thing that gets brought up a lot. But like I thought it was such a smart narrative choice to have them all have the same problem and a panic to fix the problem. So therefore, I guess I'll hang out with you even though I'm a rogue vampire who's very sassy. I guess I'll hang out with a Githyanki lady who would probably think I was annoying. Let's just go to camp and hang out. We'll see what happens because I need this out of my head. That's such a fun way to shove such different personalities into a room and then move them forward from there just to see what happens. That even just that decision on what's the antagonist in this game probably took forever. And it was such a smart choice to do it that way. I kept thinking about that the whole game is it's having a common enemy is one thing, but they have a common enemy and also a scary common problem that they're all like individually anxious about, to the fact that I got anxious. Like they were like, oh, my brain feels funny. I was like, no, we gotta fix this. Let's find a healer quick. Like there was agency in the story and it pushed me forward a lot, which I feel some games sometimes don't have. It's like, you know, not to pick on Final Fantasy, but it'll just be like, there's a baddie over there. Guess we'll go fight him. And you're like, okay. I'll go fight him. But here it was actually felt like people were scrambling for their lives and I needed to move forward because the clock's ticking. I could turn into a monster any second. Let's keep going. I thought it was a very good plot as well, along with how well written every little conversation is too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I was actually talking about it just today, that like, at the beginning, it's like enough of an intrigue to make you want to play more, but at the same time, I don't feel weird for doing side content.
Yeah.
Whereas like in Zelda, it's like, oh yeah,
my girlfriend
Princess Zelda's
dying.
like, she's like dead or dying or missing, and he's like, well, I'm gonna go and build a house and like build a funny sword with a melon on it, and it's like, what is he doing? Whereas like in this game, it's like, okay, we kind of have time to do these things, especially at the beginning when everyone's kind of just talking about this brainworm, and I don't know what's gonna happen with it because I've used loads of the powers. So I don't know if I'm going to turn or whatever, but it's like, it's a very good idea for a plot. It's so simple. It's like you don't even have to understand the world to understand the problem. You just get it and why it needs to change.
No one would like that problem, therefore.
Exactly.
I think it's very easy. Like a lot of the time I hear people talking about this game is they'll say like, oh, it's one of these games, but with a big budget. So therefore it's like, looks great and is well written and has good animations and stuff. And it's sort of like, well, like, yeah, sure, money is a big factor in that they, you know, can put this many resources to it. But like, you could hire 100 writers. That doesn't mean you're going to get a good story. Like you can get a good story with one writer. Like it's the artistry in combined with, you know, the money, you know, in order to keep people, you know, working on a project for this long without releasing any other games. Like you got to have both. You got to have people that really understand what they want to do and have a really strong vision and be experts in their field, and then just kind of have enough money to get out of their way and just let them create something like this. And it's that
and they're
combination.
All nerds. You can tell they're all nerds. It's so fun. Like the Game
Awards, like showing up in armor.
It's like, who's this guy? I love him. Like I can't remember his name, but I'm like, armor guy. Like now I'll think about him all the time. He's so cute. That's adorable that he's like, I'm gonna wear armor. Won't that be fun? I'm like, do it. That's so cute. I love when nerds get money to make their passion projects. I'm like, go for it. You get games like this because they care about the outcome. They don't, you know, it'd be nice if they make some money off this and get their return on investment and have some money in the bank to keep going. But ultimately you can tell that underneath it's like they wanted to make this awesome monolith thing and then they did it. So now they're probably just basking in the excitement of people noticed. Like, yay, this game hit so much bigger than we thought. That's really nice.
It relates actually back to Alan Wake 2, because I think that is the other big one from last year, the other example with Sam Lake, where I think that is, you know, you could, everything you just said, you might as well have been talking about Alan Wake 2. I mean, once again, it's been said a million times, but 2023, I mean, look at our top 5. Like 3 of them are from last year, and like we have games from, you know, from back from the 80s and all sorts, and like 2023 is like three games in our top 5.
Yeah. There we go.
Amazing.
Nice one.
Also, congratulations to Baldurs Gate 3.
Worth
I brought the
mentioning.
'1 game. Woo!
Yes,
I
yes,
know,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
you've won, Haley. That's the way this works.
Yes.
You have now won the bonus points.
Amazing.
The only thing I want other publishers to notice and other developers to notice is like, yes, the game's amazing. Yes, I have no idea they're going to follow it up, but it has no microtransactions, and it's done all this. It's done this well. It can be done. It can sell millions of copies. So yeah, good on them. They seem like a nice bunch. So
Yeah.
congrats, Baldur's Gate, and congrats, Haley, as well.
Yay! I made the game too. This feels like
Yeah, you're part of the team.
exciting.
Cool. Before we move on, just because we're not going to get to speak to a video game lawyer again anytime soon, I do have a few questions for you that I was
You can
wondering
talk to me
about.
anytime now. Moving forward, pro
Okay.
bono. There you go.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, just don't sign anything; it'll be fine. Okay, so just very quickly, the Cliff Notes version. How did you end up doing a career in, or what's the official line on your career, and how did you end up doing that?
I call myself a video game lawyer. Sometimes older, stuffy lawyers roll their eyes at me and go, okay. But I'm a video game lawyer. 90% of my clients are game developers, so I think I'm a video game lawyer. I do most, game developers need the same stuff that other companies need. They need a company. They need a corporate shell to put stuff in. They have intellectual property problems that they need help with. They need to learn what a stock option plan is to give their employees some benefits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
ultimately, I worked as a game journalist for about 5 years. And I really loved doing that. I went to journalism school. I had a lot of fun with that, but I just wanted something with more job security. And so I had a really hard think back in 2017. I was like, how can I stay in the games industry, but still do reading and writing is the main thing that I do. Cause that's what I'm really passionate about. And then I had a friend whose parent was an IP lawyer, just not games, but just in general. So intellectual property lawyer. And I talked to her for a bit and kind of realized I could just sort of tangentially craft my law school experience to be more about games. So my law school didn't have a video game law course or anything like that, but it had courses that could then be applied to the games industry, intellectual property, media, entertainment law, internet and privacy law, all those really specific things. And then any chance I got to write a paper or something, I would just take a topic and make it video game related and write about it.
Nice one.
And sometimes my professors were like, do you have to write about esports? I don't know what that is. And I'm like, I'm writing about esports. I don't care. Learn it. Go watch the Overwatch League for a couple hours and then read my paper.
Yeah.
Because I want to write about this. But yeah, and then I worked for a tech clinic, which was really fun right after law school. You kind of do something kind of like what doctors do with residency. You have to work under a lawyer for a year. Okay. So I worked under, love her. Her name's Jackie. She was the GOAT, miss her. She was my best friend. I loved her so much. She taught me a lot of the basics of what I know. And we worked at a tech law clinic where we got to offer legal services for really cheap, for only $100 per service. And it was something our school ran. So that was really fun. So essentially we got to really help new creative people with their small projects and make sure they didn't beat the bank to just get a document drafted or something like that. So we had a lot of board game people in my city. A lot of board game people were popping up. So we had a lot of board game clients. I tried to get as many game developer clients as I could, but it was a lot of just basic tech stuff. I have a dating app, or I have this app or that app, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then once I was done with that and I passed the bar, I got my job at Voyer Law, which is a cross-border tech law firm, but we have a specialization in video games too. So I came on just to do the video game stuff. So me and Kellen, my boss, are the video game side of that firm mostly. So we do a lot of publishing agreement review, contract drafting, really spunky IP questions that we get to answer all the time.
Yeah.
They're game devs have some fun questions. They'll just be can I put this old song from the 1800s in my game without saying anything or crediting anyone? And I have to look up if it's in the public domain or not, that kind of stuff. It's very fun. I really enjoy it. And game devs are the best clients because they're so chill and sweet and nice. It's sometimes I talk to my other friends who are lawyers, my client just screamed at me because I didn't finish this on time. I'm my client sent me a code for their game and it was really fun. I just feel really lucky.
Nice.
And I just, it's fun to help people make things they're passionate about. That makes me really happy. So my work's been very rewarding for a lawyer. I feel very lucky because I've heard a lot of horror stories. People burn out really fast, end up not liking the industry, not liking the work-life balance stuff. But I'm lucky to have a good firm where my work-life balance is really healthy. And then my clients are sweethearts and I adore all of them. So it works out really well.
I bet it's it's mutual for them as well, because I bet they've probably dealt with like some quite stuffy, serious lawyers as well. So I bet when they like pick up the phone and they're talking to you, I bet they're quite relieved as well. It's like, oh, what, they're one of us. She actually knows games. Like,
well, yeah, like I would make sure to wish list all my clients' games and like do whatever I can on the, because wish list seems like nothing, but it ends up being really helpful. It's how they point to how much money they should get from their publisher and stuff like that. So there's a couple times where I'll have a client coming in and they have a little short game on Steam. I was like, I'll play it before I chat with them. Like, why not? I have an open night, so I'll play it. And then we'll have our meeting on Monday and they're like, hi, I'm blank. I'm like, hi, I really liked your game. They're like, you played my game? Like, it's really sweet. They're not used to it. I'm like, yeah, it was really fun. It reminded me of X. So like, I made it to be like X. Oh my God. And it's just, it makes repertoire really nice. I think if I didn't play games, it would be harder to chat with them. So it's nice that it's essentially like chatting with you both. If you just wanted to open a business or something, I would just help you with that. It's just like nice, natural conversations. And they're just like, also, what's the CBCA Act? Like, I don't know what that means. I'll help them with that kind of stuff, essentially.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Nice one. That sounds great. It's really good that you get to help people like making cool stuff. Must be super rewarding. I do have a question that like, I feel like I've heard a million times from people. I still don't, I know you've touched on it before, but obviously our audience never heard it. If I buy a single player game, why do I have to accept an agreement before I can play it?
Well, because you're not owning the content of the game. You're getting a license to play the game whenever you want, even if it's physical. So, if you're buying a physical copy of a disc, you might own the disc and you can put it in your Xbox and play it whenever you want. But the content, like all the IP that's on the disc, is owned by another party. So they're essentially giving you a license to play the content, not just like the physical disc itself. So like when Epic says you can play Fortnite, but don't say really mean things to people online and do all this stuff, or we'll kick you off whenever we want. Like they can essentially revoke the license whenever you want. Owning something and being allowed to do something are really different. Like I could let you borrow my mug to drink a cup of coffee, but you couldn't take it home. It's kind of like the different energy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I see. Is there anything in these agreements that everyone is just like, yes, that maybe they should be paying attention to?
It depends on the company. Most video game companies use really standard terms and conditions. Like I write them as part of my job. And, some of them won't even use them. Like Steam has a Steam subscriber agreement that applies to your purchases anyways. And sometimes they won't even do stuff on top. They're like, let's just do the Steam subscriber agreement. That's enough. Okay. But then for the bigger companies, they'll have their own separate one where they'll say, like, here's what you're allowed to do with our content. Here's what you're not allowed to do. We can take it away at any time, blah, 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 all that stuff. But I find the ones that are really sneaky are like like Adobe. Oh, Adobe's jerks with their stuff. Because the way they set up their license is if you start a free trial with Adobe, you'll say 7-day free trial. And I've looked into this and it says like with an asterisk, subject to our terms and conditions. So of course, always subject to that. And they'll say 7 days for free and then you can cancel. But if you don't cancel within 14 days of that ending, they have it in their terms that they can charge you 50% of the yearly fee. So if you happen to not think about it.
Wow.
Yeah. So say, for example, I do the 7-day free trial and then the holidays happen. I forget about Adobe, and then it's after the holidays. I'm like, I should go cancel Adobe. They'll try to charge you like $200 to cancel.
Oh my God.
Early, instead of you paying $400 over the course of the year to pay every month, blah, blah, blah. And that's in there. And I agreed, like people agree to it when they click, yes, I agree, check the little box and say yes to the 7-day trial. So they're completely in their legal grounds to do that. I think that's shady and very weird to do.
Definitely.
It tricks a lot of people into thinking it's free when it's not, with a tiny little asterisk. But for the most part, games aren't about that. It's just, here's your game. Here's what you can do with it. You can make fan art as long as you XYZ. You can use mods as long as you XYZ. Just like the rules of what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, essentially.
Yeah, because they kind of snuck in. Because I remember not that long ago you didn't have to do that.
I was just going to
ask. All of a sudden
like,
they started popping up everywhere.
What was the point from when? Because obviously, like I think like 360 PS3 generation, I don't think I did any, and then at some point Xbox One, PS4, they started popping. Like, what was there a law that changed, or was everyone just wanting to cover their backs?
There's a lot of different laws that govern that kind of thing. Essentially, if they ever get into a problem with you, they want to make sure that you had previously agreed to all their terms so that they don't... A lot of it is you have to go to arbitration instead of being allowed to sue them or something. So say if I was mad at Fortnite because of something, but I said, yes, I agreed to the terms before I started playing Fortnite, and they had something in there that said, you're not allowed to sue us. You only can go to arbitration if you have a major problem. I can't go to court and sue them no matter my problem if it's related to Fortnite. So now they can just send me to, conveniently, the North Carolina arbitration, because that's where they are, easy for them. So I'd have to go all the way to North Carolina to go do arbitration, to fight with Epic about this thing that probably I get no money from. So it essentially just pushes off lawsuits and makes them go away. So big firms will, big companies will do that. And then also a lot of them will have the privacy policy too, because there's a lot of laws around what you're allowed to collect and what you have to tell people, why you're collecting it, how long you collect it for, where is it stored, that kind of thing. So you guys in the UK have really strict GDPR laws, like super strict, strictest in the world. So I think the world is slowly shifting towards your privacy laws, and we're just like behind. Canada's better than the US. The US is really bad. They have like almost nothing. California is pretty good, but there's some states where it's like, if you go online, it's theirs now. Like that's kind of the energy they put into it. Whereas Canada's kind of like pseudo GDPR. And then, states are now trying to follow y'all's rules a bit more to be really transparent about, when I sign on to my Sony account, like how can they share my email with some random advertising company? Like, am I allowed to tell them to stop doing that if they are doing that, blah, blah, blah. They essentially have to break it down to, here's what we collect, and step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We use your email for XYZ, and if you want us to stop using it, here's the email to contact us. Like, they have to be really transparent. Otherwise, the GDPR compliance officers would come and be like, hey, you're not doing what you said you are. You can't just say these things online and pretend. You actually have to follow through and do everything. So if there's non-compliance, they can get hit with a bunch of fines or get in trouble and stuff like that.
Cool. Just based on what you just said about GDPR being really good in the UK and like ahead of the game, do you feel like courts, maybe, in Canada or America, or the legal system in general, are actually equipped to deal with video game lawsuits? Or are they like, what's a video game? I don't understand what a microtransaction is. Like, are they up to date, or are they like lagging behind?
I mean, the courts are way better than they were in the 90s. In the 90s, they still were struggling with the internet in of itself. Like, there's a really hilarious case from Canada, Microsoft and Rudder, it's called, where they're trying to figure out if scrolling is the same as turning a page. Because they hadn't thought about it. They're like, so the guy was like, I had to scroll all the way to the bottom, so I don't have to abide by these terms and conditions. And then the case was, is that the same as turning a page? That's literally what they had to think about. So it's applying and there's already a million cases about if you can turn a page, you can sign that, then how the agreement, you can't say I couldn't turn the page. It's like, yes, you could. Yeah. Like, here you go. So it's like, is that too much effort to now have to scroll to the bottom to say you've read everything? So that's why sometimes you see them say you have to scroll to the bottom and then it lets you keep going. It's probably because of that Rudder case. They want to just make sure no one ever tries that again. But, they're still thinking about those kind of concepts. So now it's those kind of concepts for basic internet cases catching up with games. So it's kind of like lagging behind from that even. The really frustrating thing out of everything, I would say, is the video game patent mechanics stuff. So game mechanic patents getting approved. Texas is donking up. They are approving so many patents that I think are just ideas, which you can't patent ideas. You can only patent very specific things, because what if I patented 2 + 2? Then if you thought about 2 + 2, I could say, give me $5. That's ridiculous. Like, you can't patent ideas. But what's happening is these really good patent lawyers are really good at writing game ideas as if it's an innovative software thing. So they'll send in these patents and they'll say, the idea is basically like player 1 talks to player 2 and it affects another NPC over here who remembers it or something. If I were to strip away all the silly language and all the guff, that's what they're protecting, which is in 1,000 other games. But they're just really good at writing it, so it looks like a bunch of software code is doing a bunch of stuff, and then it gets approved. And then that has indie devs going, can I do this, or am I going to get sued from, Warner Brothers for the Nemesis system thing? Like, are they going to sue me if I try this? And everyone's kind of dancing around it, not knowing, because it's a really
it's not even just like we'll get sued if we do it. It's also like we just have to check everything now. Like it's like
Yeah.
every
Yeah,
mechanic
yeah.
we have to say, well, just in case there is a patent for it, like even if there isn't,
Yeah.
we have to check now. Like that's an added cost and time investment.
Yeah, and that really shouldn't be something that game devs have to invest time in. Like, you shouldn't have to do a patent search for fun, spunky game development ideas. You should have to do a patent search if you're creating a new engine, or if you're creating a new software system that solves a problem or something. Like, then they probably would be doing patent checks. Not, would it be cool if this happened? Like, oh no, like Nintendo did it and patented it. Like, that's silly. It's just going to stifle everything, and the District Court of Texas approves everything. So Nintendo goes to Texas to get everything approved.
That's crazy.
They'll only go to that state to get everything approved because they're notoriously patentee friendly. And it's just gonna, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see a big, like, bunch of cases come out. Maybe Epic will go after them or something because they have the funds to do it. But until a big banked, like, game company cares enough to pick at the scabs of these patent applications and say, this isn't legit, like, let me challenge this. They won't go away, but it's so much money to be the person who is like, time to challenge you, Nemesis system. You're not actually a good enough patent to be approved. They have to go to court, spend a bunch of money to prove that that's a thing before they're allowed to take it down.
That's funnily enough, the next thing I was going to ask you actually was about that. Literally that exactly you just described. I think it was back in like 2000, probably about 2010 in Street Fighter. I play fighting games. So in Street Fighter, there's a trial system where you have to complete a combo and then it will like move on to the next trial. So it'll be like punch, punch, kick. Oh, you did it. Well done. And then Tekken took that and did like their own version of it. It's exactly the same thing. But in Tekken, if you press start, it will play the combo in real time, which Street Fighter didn't have. You couldn't watch it. And Tekken patented that idea. And they kept the patent, and I think it's just expired. But I was thinking, like, how do you explain that to a court? Like, how do they possibly have this, like, and then, there's some old judge being like, oh, no, like, yeah, okay, like, whatever. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
No, it's frustrating because one of the elements for a patent to be approved is it has to be novel, so new. So nothing before it could have ever come out. Because why should this person who just copies that idea get all the money and get all the monopoly on the market for it, essentially? So then there's this thing called the posita, who's the person of ordinary skill in the art. And they're the one who decides if something is new or not. But with games, who's a posita as someone who's played every video game ever made? Is that the posita for video game mechanic patents? Because that's what happens when ideas get patented.
I think it's you, Haley. I think it's you.
Yeah, I was going to say I think it's you. But conflict of interest a little bit, I guess.
Conflict of interest. But you see how ridiculous that concept is as soon as you actually start to apply patent law to these ideas.
Yeah, who knows? There's how many indie games were released today? You know, like who can judge if something's new?
Yeah.
You know,
there's thousands of Steam games that get released literally every week. So who's combing through every single one of those to know whether something's been done or whatever? And it's just frustrating. And I mean, if they get approved, then they just get to sit back and wait for someone to challenge it, and they know that indie studios don't have the money to do that. So the indie studio either has to say, "Ooh, let's try," and see if they try to get our game taken down for the patent infringement, or they could go after them from the first place, which they're not going to do. So they'll just say, "We just won't include this cool thing in our game." Which, what a bummer! Like, that's completely counterintuitive to what that industry should be doing. So it's just frustrating all around.
Yeah. All right, nice one. Okay. I have one more question for you, then we're going to wrap up, then we will release you because we've been going 2 hours.
No worries.
Is there any circumstance or anything that our show, The Bonus Points, could ever be sued for like slander, or is there any situation that like, or even Minnmax, is there any situation where legally a developer could be like, you can't say that about our game?
She's going to charge us for this, Ollie. You can't. This was her plan all along. Like,
I thought it was pro bono. That means free, right?
How much is that question? How much is that question worth, Haley?
So it's one thing that happens, especially in internet law, is like someone will say something bad about someone else or something else. But when you go to court, they have to essentially prove that that's not true about them. So if you're speaking truthful statements or even statements of opinion, like I can say Baldurs Gate 3 is awesome, or we'll say something bad. Baldurs Gate 3 stinks. It's awful. That's my opinion. So if they tried to sue me for saying something bad about Baldurs Gate 3, we'd go to court and the judge would say, "Do you think it stinks?" And I would say, "Uh-huh." And he would say, "Case closed, gabble, gabble." Because that's just my opinion. But if I was to say the the CEO of Larian did something illegal. And then that person said, no, I didn't. I'm going to sue you for, damaging my character and my name. That he would have to prove that didn't happen. Or I alternatively would have to prove it did happen, depending on who that onus has, because it sometimes switches depending on the situation.
But if I said I think the head of Larian did something, would I be fine then? I think he's gone and done something awful, but because I say think it, is that okay?
Journalists have it's the golden word, allegedly. Is the golden word. So we got taught in journalism school, allegedly essentially shifts the liability from you onto a third party who said it first. So where it's hearsay, so someone says it first, someone tells you, oh, Larian did something the head of Larian did something awful. I feel bad because we just said how cute he was at his arm.
I know. I was thinking we say it about someone that sucks.
Allegedly, he gave all of the orphans cupcakes. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Then I could say, I allegedly heard that from somebody, and then they would say, hey, who'd you hear that from? Even though I'm the one spreading that information, I'm essentially saying I heard it. I don't know if it's true or not. Allegedly you'll hear journalists on the news every night say, allegedly a 50-year-old man is allegedly blah blah blah. They just keep using that word because it's kind of been in case law a lot. That word's been shown to be a word that essentially means I didn't hear it myself, I'm just spreading information about this. Doesn't mean someone can still go after you if you're the bigger fish in the situation. If someone said something and then CNN picked it up and said allegedly, a lot of times they might still try to sue CNN because they just have more money than the first person who lied.
Right,
but ultimately it could just be, it just comes down to if it's a true statement or if it's a statement of opinion, you're probably okay. It depends on what you say. Every lawyer says this. It depends on the facts. They'll say that for every single problem you ever have. But if I were to just tell a
Max
lie,
Payne
go
3,
out there.
the combat hasn't held up. Allegedly, the combat on console, allegedly the aiming isn't very good anymore. It looks really cool though, and the cutscenes are cool. Allegedly, stay away, Rockstar.
But the internet has a lot of interesting, we were talking about case law that changes how you view things. Sometimes there'll even be hyperlinks and news stories to the original poster of something that's, slander or libel or whatever. And they'll say, is even including the hyperlink spreading the misinformation? Or do you have to never include the link to the original source and just say allegedly and let your audience go find that original thing for there's a lot of case law around it. And it's very circumstantially based, but if you're giving your opinion on something, it would literally be going to court and you'd say, I think that, Your Honor.
Yeah.
What can you say? But if you're coming after, if it's a fact and you say, I think a fact happened or I think something happened, that's different than I think this is bad or good or what have you. You can't really go after someone for that.
Okay. I think we're going to be safe, Joe.
Are you just bad? Are you bad mouthing people on the pod?
Yeah,
all the time. Yeah.
Cut that bit out. That's just for us.
Right. Is that all of your? Are you finished with all your questions, Ollie?
I mean,
everything you need to know.
We don't have time. I'm very curious about Fortnite because it seems like IP hell. But we don't have time.
I would love to talk to an IP lawyer at Epic. I said if that one person I could interview in the law space, an IP lawyer at Epic, I would love to know what their agreements look like and how crazy their filing system must be of just Lego file 1, Lego file 2, Alan Wake character, The Witcher, Geralt. They just have everyone in there. They must have so many licensing agreements.
It's even crazy that in their game, Batman can shoot Spider-Man. How did that even come out? You'd think both parties would be okay, no guns, and also you can't interact with our right. Well, it's too big.
But when the money's big enough, people tend to relax a little bit about the sanctity of their IP. I think that's what's going on.
Very true.
Right. I think that's everything.
Brilliant. Is there anything you want to shout out in particular, Haley? Anywhere you want people to check you out? Your Twitter, Instagram, whatever, anything at Minnmax?
Yeah, so I'm a community manager at Minnmax, so I'm on content regularly over there. My socials are HaleyFax for pretty much everything. HALEYFAX. That's a pun on Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is where I'm from in Canada. I know in the UK you have a Halifax too, don't you? Maybe that's somewhere else. Maybe it's Ireland.
We have one, and we have a bank called Halifax. We have both. Yeah.
Oh, okay, fun. I wonder if our city's called that because of that. But no one ever gets that pun because no one ever knows anything about Canada. It's kind of a bummer, but oh well.
I got it. My stepdad lives in Nova Scotia, so I got it. It's fine.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah. Yay. I know. I have a lot of American friends, and it's funny how we learn all their geography and they don't learn anything about ours. Like, we'll be like, oh, every state, and I'll list every state for you. And they're like, what the heck is Newfoundland? They like, don't know what I'm talking about.
Once again, for us, it's they're all just our places. When they're like, it's like, you got New York, we got the original York. Like, I mean, like, like everything you have, we had it first. Like,
the way I never even thought about New York is the New York from, yeah, of course. I never even thought about that. So I'm just as bad with all of your stuff.
So once again, thank you so much for giving up so much of your time, and then also for recommending Baldur's Gate 3, because I mean we were both going to play it. Like we obviously we do a game every 2 weeks, and Baldur's Gate 3 is probably one we might have been a bit scared to pick ourselves just because of the size of it. And so you got us into playing it day one, and then obviously its placement on the list just sort of tells you how much we've been absolutely loving it. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on and bringing the number one game on the list.
I'm so glad you guys liked it. I loved it too. So it's really fun to chat about with you. This is so fun. I love your podcast.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and obviously we've mentioned them before, but Minnmax have been a big influence for us. Ollie and I watch a whole lot of the content over there. We really enjoy all of it, and I think Haley's been an amazing contribution to the team over there. So if you haven't checked them out, definitely go and have a look over there. There's just like, it's not even like anything particular. It's just like it's like a tone of positivity that you don't. There's always quite a lot of cynicism, I think, in game journalism, and I think it's like people kind of almost like seem like happy to Starfield isn't as good as people hope. Like, let's stomp them when they're down. And there's just none of that over there, and that's something that we always really try to avoid. Like even the games on the list that we didn't end up enjoying, like we never we weren't saying, let's pick Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets to trash on this PS1 game. We're like, we didn't play it as a kid. People did like it. We were always trying to find a positive spin and kind of see, at least what the idea was. So that's, I think, something that we've kind of taken from Minnmax and something that we really enjoy there. So definitely do recommend checking their stuff out.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel really grateful that I'm a part of that team even. It feels kind of like a fever dream, to be honest, because I knew Ben. I met Ben a long time ago when I was an intern at Game Informer when he worked there. So that's how I met Ben and Leo and Jeffem and a lot of the other ones. And then I'd listened to Minnmax, like both of you, since 2019 when he spun off and founded it. And just the fact that I came on just to do community management, but then it kind of spun into this more of a content thing, which is really fun. So I still get to engage with the community, but like via content, which is like the most fun thing ever. And just do that in my evenings and my free time after reading documents and documents and documents all day. So it's such a nice like brevity from that, but still in games. So I feel really lucky that I get to do a part of that stuff too. And they're the loveliest people. Every single person on that team is like the sweetest. You know how they always say, there's always one person behind the scenes who's not nice. They're all the loveliest. They're all so nice, and I love hanging out with them when I get to see them. They're all the greatest.
Nice one.
Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, any final things you want to say, Ollie, before we get out of here?
Yes, very quickly, I'm going to run through what's coming up. 26th of January, Outer Wilds. 9th of February, Karururin on the Game Boy Advance. 23rd of February, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. That's what's coming up.
Okay, cool. So those are the games coming up.
That's an interesting combo.
Yeah, we just pick from everywhere. We just pick anything.
The last game we did was Survival Kids on the Game Boy Color, which so we are all over the place with our game selections, but that's the way we like it. We do a lot of cult classics, then we always have to try and get a big one as well, just to counterbalance it, I guess. So, so people show up as well every now and then. But anyway, that is the end of this podcast here. Thank you all so much for joining us, and whether you were listening or watching, and we'll see you all in the next one. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.